welcome everybody. Thank you very much for hanging out, guys. We've got a rare pig show sighted in the wild. It's been a little while since we've done one of these, but I'm very happy to be back into it now that my schedule's a bit more consistent and back to normal. And today we've got none other than the future of Terran, Joe, professional CSGO player himself. How you doing, man?
Hey, what's up, man? I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Not bad, not bad. I've been getting my butt kicked on the ladder today. Lots of charge zealots killing lots of drones and whatnot. But it's been not too bad. I'm excited to talk to you actually and talk a bit about NA StarCraft as well as the midst of everything else. How's kind of lockdown treating you? How's the online tournaments been going with the Masters? Are you enjoying competing at home, or are you starting to miss live events?
Um, hmm. I think it's a bit complicated because obviously it's nice with everything being at home. Like I can always be in my own routine. Things are very consistent as long as I maintain to be consistent. But there's a certain aspect of like I do really enjoy going to events and hanging out with all the StarCraft players, and that's something that I would really love to do at some point. Again, I mean, obviously it's tough with everything being shut down, but it's a bit bittersweet. I think everything being online slightly helps me performance wise, but I don't know.
Just not having to deal with the different setups and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. It's just more consistent. You know what I mean? There's less that can go wrong.
Yeah. It's something where I just confirmed we've got the audio levels good, everything's set up. I'm so paranoid about today's show for some reason that I've got some production issues. I think we're actually completely fine, so I can finally move my focus purely over to us just talking. So sorry about that. A bit distracted there. Yeah, it's interesting, right? So I think you learn a lot at events, watching over the shoulder, talking with players, forming a lot of connections as well. Like I think it's hard to get as close with other pro gamers. Do you have a group of custom game partners you practice with a lot?
I think the only consistent practice partners I have would be the NA players. Like I play a lot with Neeb, I play a lot with Silky, I play a lot with Jon Snow. And then outside of the NA players who I play a lot with, it just kind of depends for the Europeans, right? So, yeah, it just depends on how the matches go, right? Like if there's like certain matchups where ex-European players playing against Terran, I'll usually hit up that player or they'll message me and I'll practice with them.
Yeah.
So it's I don't know. For Europeans, it's just kind of everywhere, but I have a pretty consistent NA practice group.
I think that's so important. I think it was always really frustrating for me back in the day because no one wanted to practice with lag, and there weren't even very many American players for a little while there in the middle years. It was kind of weird. You had the early NA pros were really super duper, everywhere, and then it kind of died off for a while. And I think that's something, I kind of wanted to talk about today because you've been coming up now for many years. So that's something I want to come back to later is kind of coming up in the NA scene. And, we've had discussions about like welfare and other countries allowing it to be more comfortable and Korea having this brood war culture kind of leading into team houses. But before we even get to that, I mean, you now are 18 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you've been playing for so long. So you're one of these players who's kind of come up from a really young age. How'd you get into StarCraft? What was like the backstory of first getting into StarCraft 2?
Well, it was when Heart of the Swarm came out. Heart of the Swarm came out 2013, right? So if I'm correct, 2013 was around the time that my oldest sister got married. And I don't remember the context of the situation, but she was living at my parents' house and her husband was also living in her house. And whenever her husband would go off to work, he had the beta of Heart of the Swarm. So he would let me use his computer while he was gone at work, and I would play the Heart of the Swarm beta. And then the timing just worked out pretty nicely where Heart of the Swarm was released like 3 days after my birthday. So he bought Heart of the Swarm for my birthday. So I initially played like 1 or 2 seasons of Heart of the Swarm. I got Masters like my second season. I think I got Masters my first season and then couldn't get Masters again the next season. Because I remember there was some weird bug where there was like 8% got Master that season. I got it, and then the next season I couldn't get it. Got frustrated, kept dying to like random all-ins, and then I quit until like Super Void. So I played like 2 seasons of Heart of the Swarm.
Did you play any other RTS games, or was that the introduction? Because you were about, what, 12, 13 years old at that
Yeah.
time?
Um, it's hard to say like where it all matches up time wise, but I've always played like a lot of the Command and Conquer games with my older brothers because we
Mhm.
play a lot of those together, just like LAN setup. Um, I don't know how the timings work out though. Like I don't know
Was
which
that
one I played first.
like Generals, Red Alert
Yeah,
3, or
Generals, Red Alert 2, like just a lot of them, like Tiberian Sun. We would play all the Command and Conquer, like Renegade, if you remember that.
I didn't
Um,
play Renegade. I played a little tiny bit of Generals. I never even played Tiberian Sun actually. Like it's funny because the first one, like OG Command and Conquer and Red Alert, were some of the first games I ever played.
mhm.
But then I didn't really play too many of them. But I remember there was like, yeah, they were some of the good RTSs. So you kind of grew up playing a bit of RTS and stuff. So you had a
Yeah,
little bit of it in your blood, in your upbringing, right? It's kind of where a
yeah,
lot of people, they're like, whoa, like masters so quickly, like how, what the hell? So I guess you'd kind of had a bit of that, like playing with your friends and your brothers and at LAN and that sort of thing
yeah.
already, right?
Hmm.
Did you go to internet cafes as a little kid, or?
Just everything home. We the thing is like we've always had a lot of computers. Like my dad got into computers like way back, like in the 80s or 90s. I don't know the exact timing, but he's always been a computer guy for like his entire life. So there's just always been those kind of things around me.
That's sick. So he was probably already setting up like networks and
Yeah,
stuff where you guys could play with each other since like the mid 90s or something.
I think he even played Red Alert 1 back in college. I forget exactly. I remember he used to play games as well, but I mean, he got older,
Yeah.
had kids, and kind of got past that. But yeah,
Yeah, and I think it's also it's hard, especially for the older generation, to consolidate playing games as a hobby because I mean, not only do you get busy, but gaming was seen as like a negative thing. It's an addictive thing. It's a guilty pleasure. It's like I feel like most people once they have like a family, there's like a whole like, oh, I don't have time for that. And I think it's partially like just because societally, a lot of times it's like, well, that's something you got to kind of, I don't know. I kind of imagine it's like once you have a family, if you're still spending a lot of time playing games, a lot of people have this attitude. It's like the person who's like hiding in the kitchen, like eating a second serving, standing up over the pot of food, and like it doesn't count if I don't like put it on my plate. Like it was this weird guilty pleasure thing. I remember my dad used to get really addicted to like just watching TV series and playing games as well. I can specifically remember playing Warcraft 2. We were really into it. And then my dad was playing it. He was like stuck on this level that me and my brother had already finished. And we were both just backseating him really hard on either shoulder. And we were like, do this, do this. He got really pissed off and told us to piss off and like shouted at us. But yeah, I don't think he's touched a video game in like decades as well. So it's kind of cool though to have that accessibility, get to play the games when you're young, kind of dive straight on into it. I know you play quite a bit of CS these days as well. So was it
I
all RTS
actually like
games?
stopped playing CS nowadays. I don't play too much. Um,
Hey, we got you
I
back.
played a little bit. Like I played today with Special because he Special like asks me a ton to play with him. So I'm like, all right, let's play some. But I don't know. I nowadays I just play a lot of chess and just kind of chill. I don't know. I don't know. I don't play as many competitive games now. I just relax a bit
You
more.
were never like a Dota guy or a LoL guy or anything?
Um, well, I played a lot of LoL, and actually, it reminded me when I was like 6 or 7. I played a lot of Frozen Throne, like the arcade. Like that was just something I would play all the time. I actually remember specifically about this though. Um, I don't remember how it all works, but basically, from my memory, you could queue into Dota, like the original Dota on Frozen Throne or whatever,
Yeah.
and you had like your ranked queues, unranked queues, and my brothers never let me play ranked unless I could play a 5v5 with all AIs and have a perfect KDA. And every time I would do just destroy these AIs, like I would destroy them, and then I would just like do the most average donkey move and get one death, and they would never let me play. Um, but besides that, I played a lot of League of Legends. I actually played League of Legends since the beta. So I played League of Legends back in like 2009, 2010,
Yeah.
and I played on and off um, until like Super Void. So I played a lot of League of Legends until around 2016, and then when I played StarCraft 2, that's kind of when I stopped playing League. I kind of played a bit more League
Mm.
at the end of last year, like after I got knocked out of Montreal. I played TFT for like a month, and then I played League of Legends for a month, and then I got back to practicing before StarCraft. But yeah, I don't. I just kind of play whatever I feel like playing for the most part.
Yeah. Sometimes it's
I
good
never
to have
really.
like a little foray, but I think for me, there's always a point if you get a certain level of competitiveness and then it becomes too serious and it's like, oh, this is actually just taking away like competitive drive or too much energy away from my true passion of StarCraft. That's for
Yeah,
me, my relationship with it. I think it's fun to dig into it a little bit, but there's always a point where you're like, oh, if I'm not actually taking this really seriously, it just becomes a bit of an energy sink, and you've got to be very, I think, particular because you've only got so much mental bandwidth for like
yeah,
learning and figuring out strategies and that sort of stuff.
exactly. And that's I only play things when I'm like really interested in it. Um, so on that topic, like recently I've been getting into chess, and chess is like so interesting to me. Like I don't know how it's taken me this long to get into chess, but it's a 1v1 game where the entire game changes based on your opponent and how they think. And that's like just something that I find most interesting, like playing around your opponent. So recently I've been dedicating a lot of time to thinking about chess.
That's cool. Yeah, you really can. We always laugh about how Artosis and Tasteless are exactly who they are in chess as they are in StarCraft, where all Artosis wants to do is like the most slow, steady development of the board. You know, he's trying to play like mech Terran in Brood War in chess. Like it
Yeah.
is, he never makes an aggressive or a risky play. He never even looks like he's seeking advantage. He just kind of wants to like very, very slowly progress the board state. And it's like Tasteless, on the other hand, is just a cheesy bastard in chess, like same way as
Yeah,
in
he's gonna
StarCraft.
trade up every point he possibly can. When you get that queen for a queen trade, he takes it every time. I guarantee
Yeah,
it.
he's like, oh, let's mess the game up because I like he wants the chaos, right? He's like, I know my opponent's going
Yeah.
to be less comfortable in this than me. I love that. I find chess is really hard though because there's no mechanical side, right? And I guess that's probably
Yeah.
what can appeal as well. Is for me, I felt like to get more out of it, I would need to put a bit more time into studying openings and kind of learning the different strategic lines a little bit more. I think that's something attractive though, right? You don't get cheesed. I mean, especially as a Terran player who doesn't have creep spread and Zergling spotters everywhere. And is kind of, I think, you know, the downfall of a lot of Terrans is getting surprised by very cheeky all-ins sometimes.
Yeah.
You don't have that in chess. You've got perfect information. I found that a double-edged sword because it was just as frustrating because I couldn't figure out what to do in certain situations. Whereas like I can mess around on a real-time mechanical game and just play my way through situations and just try things and figure them out. But I was more like, oh, I feel the impetus playing chess to actually go back and study every loss and figure out kind of where things went and try to understand it more. So for me, it has to be a bit more of a like, you got to put a good bit of your energy into learning and progressing. You can't, like, for me, I don't find it enjoyable to just play some 5-minute chess games and just move some pieces around. If there's no
Mhm.
structure behind it, I find it's too much information and like I'm hungry to learn it, but I'm also I think afraid to dedicate the energy
Yeah.
to learn it. So I haven't played a
I
lot
think
of
it's
chess in a while.
also nice in my circumstance because there's a lot of people in StarCraft who play chess, so I just end up like I don't really play ladder. I just play against people I know, so that's always interesting, just playing with friends and talking about it with them. So I definitely think that's a nice environment for that.
What's your do you play laser at all?
No, I'm nowhere good. I only just started playing like a week or so ago.
Oh,
Week or
okay,
two ago.
cool. All right, so
It's
you're
pretty
early on in
recent.
the enjoyment. All right, let me know if you hit that burnout point where you're getting upset like I did, where I was like, I'm too bad at this game, and I want to learn more openings and stuff, but I also don't want to put the time into it. And that was when I quit playing. I bitched out.
Yeah, it's nice though. What I really like about it is what I said earlier about the 1v1 aspect and like playing off of your opponent. I think that's really interesting. But also positive to it is that there the double-edged sword you're talking about, right? Where there's no mechanical skill to it. Like for me, I already play StarCraft. I already play League of Legends. I already play CS:GO. Like these are 3 games that require a lot of mechanics, and I feel like I'm very strong mechanically. And
Yeah.
I don't feel like it's necessary. Like I don't have a big drive to play a game just to be good mechanically. Like it's not that interesting. Like um, I just I've been enjoying the intellectual side of things a bit more. You know what I mean? Like the thinking against your opponent. So I
Yeah.
like that.
I mean, one of the coolest things StarCraft teaches you is, you know, making confident decisions without perfect information. and you develop this very imperfect way of playing things out, and then you go to chess and suddenly you see everything and you're like, oh, okay. This is, yeah, I see every single little detail, and suddenly it's like, wow. But it's still so hard to process everything because there's still so many options and there's still so much flexibility as the board state changes. I think what chess teaches you more than anything is how to read the state of the board. So trying to figure out, general rules for measuring up where things are in the game and kind of going, okay, so here's some advantages to this position, here's some disadvantages, and trying to come up with little bits of rules, but also pattern recognition, which is a big part of both games, to try and, I guess, identify certain risks and certain kind of things to keep your eyes open for as it develops. Do you feel like you've also really, like you mentioned, you're really trying to get a feel for how the other player thinks, and you're kind of like, is there a little bit of like trying to predict what they're going to do next? Do you feel like you're doing a bit of like, oh, I'm trying to get in their head and go, what do I think he's aiming for with the next few moves?
Yeah, I think that's where I want to be. But as of now, I'm still just really trying to understand the game and trying to understand, like, I mean, obviously I understand how all the pieces work.
Yeah.
But just like really understanding that and just getting a feel for, like, as you were saying, like getting yourself into these situations, finding yourself in certain patterns and like understanding those first. So I like my first approach for now is just focusing on what I can do. And I play every game turn by turn. And then I feel like as I develop my game understanding and I like understand some more openers, then I find it really interesting to play off your opponent. But I'm taking it slowly for now.
That's cool, man. Awesome. I love to see players getting into chess a bit more. So winding back the clock a bit and on the story of getting into it, you grew up playing some Command and Conquer and stuff, playing in your family. You grew up in a little bit of a mini team house, almost, I guess, with early RTS experience.
My brothers are very competitive.
So, sorry, how many brothers do you have? You said you have one older sister who's quite a bit older, was getting married when you were a little kid, but yeah.
I got 3 older brothers.
Oh, okay, so you're the baby of the whole group?
Not exactly. I mean, I have a lot of siblings.
Okay.
I got quite a few. I don't know. I have 3 older brothers, though.
Okay.
They're all pretty competitive.
Okay, so you kind of grew up all competing with each other. Did they beat the shit out of you as well? Did you guys used to fight a lot?
See, I was never one for confrontation. Like, they all fought a lot, right? Like, they were very aggressive with each other. But I think me personally, I was always pretty low key, and I always kept to myself and just, I don't know. I've never been very confrontational, so.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, me and my brother used to.
All of them are very, very aggressive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what. Like, I really have no idea what happened to make me the way that I am compared to them. But I think
there's 3 chimps just beating their chests and like trying to, assert dominance, and you're just off to the side like, you friggin' dummies. Yeah. That's kind of cool. Yeah. It's funny. I remember getting like so upset and worked up fighting with my brother when we were young, and it was very nice. There was one time when I was being a dick, and then he got angry and he tried to like beat me up, and then I punched him in the face, and I think I'd gotten big enough at that point that he got kind of intimidated, and we kind of like called a truce, and we like never fought again, and we're like best friends from then on. My older brother, and that was, I think, much better relationship. It's so dumb, this like trying to constantly dominate each other and be the alpha.
Obviously with my family, they're all past it. We're all like very, very close to each other. Like, I mean, when you have a big family, I think family becomes a very important value in your life. So we're all pretty close to that. But yeah, definitely when I was a lot younger, there was a lot of that going on.
So how long did it take you to assert dominance over RTS games? Did you guys play a lot of games together? Was there a point where you became the best gamer in the house?
I mean, if you ask them, they're always gonna give you a different answer. But I think I was way better than them at League of Legends. Like, I was just way, way better than them because we would play a lot of 3v3 and 5v5 together. And I got Diamond back in 2016. And that was Diamond when it was like way harder in League of Legends. That was like you went Diamond to Challenger, if I remember correctly. So Diamond was like a pretty big deal in League of Legends.
It was like Masters kind of equivalency, maybe a Masters 2 or something, yeah.
And they were all like gold, maybe platinum. So I don't know. I think as I got older, I was just better than them. But I mean, if you ask them, they're going to give you a different answer.
That's cool, man. So you're about 12 when HOTS came out. You played it for a few seasons. You got Masters real quick. So yeah, what was the progression like into competitive play? I feel like, I mean, it's crazy to think back because I think you got GM in 2015, if I remember correctly.
So I didn't start playing Legacy of the Void until around mid 2016. So I probably got GM the first season I started playing, which was maybe mid to late 2016, and that was just off of Proxy Theoraxing every single game and every matchup.
Yeah.
But it was broken back then, so.
Yeah, beyond the spirit animal of everyone, a lot of Zergs still complain about that. But yeah. So what led you to getting into Legacy then and getting more competitive? What was the? Did you just go, oh, I missed that StarCraft game, let's play some? Like how did you fall back into it?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I asked my older brother. I was like, "Yo, can you buy me Legacy of the Void? I don't have $40." And he's like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" He bought me it. I started playing, and then I'm not really sure. I just kind of started playing. It was pretty interesting to me. Like I was having a lot of fun with it. I got GM pretty quickly. I think it was definitely really nice, like ranking up so quickly. Like, it was probably like a nice ego thing. And then I don't know. I just kept playing, and then around late 2016, there was a Sizerm Cup, and I talked to my oldest brother. I was like, "Hey, would you be interested in taking me to this?" And like I was like, "I'm top GM," not knowing how awful it was, like top 100 GM. Like I thought that was like really good back then. I was like, "Yeah, I'm top 100 GM. I think I can do really well here." And I mean, I don't know. He said yes, I guess. I'm not really sure why he said yes, but he took me to it with his girlfriend, and that was my first LAN. I choked pretty hard against Raze. But after that, it was like a ton of fun because from that point on, like my entire mindset from late 2016 to like all the way to 2018 was that if I just practice and I practice really hard and I get good mechanically and I play exactly, if I just play like roughly my level that I do in practice in tournament and I don't choke, then I can be better than everyone in NA. Obviously, exception being me and Scarlet. But like I had like a very focused goal, and I knew that like if I just practiced and I didn't choke, I could just be better than everyone else. So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna do this. I don't know. So I just kept playing. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've been so methodical at it. From your early entering kind of the pro scene. And before, I guess most people would probably have even considered you a pro. I remember you always were just kind of just trying to improve. You were always asking opponents for questions after they beat you on ladder. You were kind of, getting custom games and just playing all the tournaments you could and stuff. That's cool though. So you were kind of, I guess, around 4 years ago, 14 years old, right?
Yeah,
So you were in high school, you'd come home, hop on the ladder. Do you remember like daydreaming in school about StarCraft strategies and stuff?
Nah.
You just like, hop on and play some games. All right.
It's just Proxy Theorex every game. It was Proxy Theorex into 2-base all-inning every game. I don't know. It's pretty funny.
You're like, what if I proxy a 4th Rax? Oh my god.
Actually, yeah, because I had some really nice wins, like I think late 2016 and early 2017, where I remember the old ESL America Cups. I would beat like Keen or Alive, just proxy X in them. I was really excited about that.
Hells yeah! The first time you cheese a legit pro gamer when you're coming up those ranks, man, it's good. It's one to be proud of, man. I remember just cheesing games off real pro gamers who weren't really real pro gamers in early wings and tournaments where I'd like just do drone drills and stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm expanding, look, and then I just pull all my drones and drill through their unit in the wall and run speedlings in. I'd do that, or I'd like just drop hydras in 3 bases at once, and everyone was so bad they couldn't like react to 3 things hitting, and it was like 32 drone 3-bit like hydra drops off 2 base into the opponent's 3 bases at once. Like, but I remember being so exceptionally proud of those wins. And when you're early on and your strategy's kind of simple, but there is a bit of an ego feedback loop where you're leveling up and you're getting higher on that ladder and you start playing tournaments and you start doing better. And then so after that up to that Storm Cup, you were kind of like, oh, if I just, I'm just going to grind games and see how I go. But from there, you went there. Mr. Whipple took you out. I think he's in the chat, by the way. I know he's out there watching Rays. But yeah, basically, did the mindset change there? Do you remember going, I got to learn how to play proper? You sit there and watch the Day 9 daily? Did you like stare at Uthermal's stream?
Yeah, so this is, I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent if you can bring me back afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I got into Legacy of the Void around, I know it was after my 14th birthday. So yeah, sometime mid 2016. And the first thing I did when I came back, and this is a really interesting topic because I really like you, and I watched a lot of your Pig dailies back in the day. But from 2016, I went back and watched a ton of Day 9 dailies. Like I watched a ton of them, right? Because my thought process, like improvement is key, right? I need to improve, and I need to like work towards improving, and just do whatever I can to work towards that goal. So what I did is I focus a ton on two things. First of all, don't choke in tournament. And then my second thing I focus on is forming good habits. And these are the two things I still maintain to this day. So like I would go and watch all the Day 9 dailies. And I remember there's like a ton of things I'd watch, and there's like a ton of things I would pick up on. Like I remember Day 9 would always say like, don't box your units, get into the habit of clicking your units. And there was a ton of like these just really important things like camera hotkeys and just like basic things that are like really important, but it helped me develop a lot of really healthy habits. And from that same idea, I got a lot of that from you as well, because that was around the time when you're doing a lot of your pick dailies, and I learned a ton from you in Day 9. Like I actually really enjoyed that stuff. I think my favorite video from you was the late 2016 BlizzCon video where you were just talking about a rhythm between Beyond and Dark, and that was a video I enjoyed a lot. Like that. Yeah, I think what you've talked about helped me a lot with shaping the way I view the game. So I think that's really interesting.
Thanks, man. I was really proud of that video. That was like kind of like a verbal essay, that specific one about rhythm, but it really makes me happy to see, it's very affirming for me, because I was saying, man, it's a shame that Day 9 isn't doing StarCraft content, and there was this big gap in the learning content around that time. Like I remember All Things Protoss was the most devoid of hope place I'd ever looked at. There's just no guides. There was no Protoss guides in early Legacy. And I was like, what the fuck? There was just, Gemini came out later and lots of other people started putting out heaps of content. But I remember there was just this moment where I think a lot of people had got frustrated with Blizzard and kind of left the scene. And some things with swarm hosts and Heart of the Swarm turned a lot of people off the game, I think. And there was this moment where it took a little bit to rebound. So to see a player that's developed as much as you now, where, I mean, I got the pleasure of you just backhanding me yesterday in the tournament and being like, and it's the same thing when I play you on ladder. I'm like, oh, he's just so good. I'm like, his Marines are better than other players' Marines, man. It's just like the micro, the mechanics, the tight openings. I'm like, it's cool to see you've come so far. If someone makes it platinum to diamond, I feel really happy if they let me know, learning from my videos or whatever was part of that. But to see you become, one of the absolute best players in North America, hands down, head and shoulders above the rest of the pack, where, I put you up there with Neeb and Scarlet, and I feel like there's another player who I've recently put.
Estrella.
Yeah, Estrella. That's who I'm thinking of. I'm like, who am I thinking of? I know there's someone else. You and Estrella both have kind of, I feel like you're just part of the Scarlet and Neeb crew now, the two of you. So it's very cool to see that. And yeah, I'm just so happy, because I mean, I have so many memories of you. You would just shoot me messages from many years ago, just be like, I'm really struggling against Zerg or whatever. And you'd just, you'd just ask some questions on BattleNet or whatever. But you were always very just kind of oddly studious, with your approach. Like, I'm just going to try and learn more and get a bit better at the game.
Yeah. Whereas I think one of the nicest things is just losing is really cool, because that means you have something, right? And like whenever you lose, the way that I think of it is there's like, it could be either A, you have a builder loss, B, you're bad mechanically, C, you made a bad decision,
Yep.
But there's always something you can learn from a loss, right? Very rarely is it just you just got a build or a loss. And if it is that, then you're just not playing builds, right? So I think I don't know. I think there's a lot of things you can just if you just think about things and you change the way you think about certain things slightly, like you can improve a lot. I think you just need to be able to like take some time and think about it.
Yeah. I remember there's actually a famous, no, maybe not famous, but, and this is maybe not even a real quote. I'm about to quote Nee based off a Reddit comment I saw, and then I'm like, that could just be made up actually. So I think there was someone was saying once in like a Reddit thread, and they were like, okay, so Neeb talking about his race switch from Terran to Protoss was kind of like it was sometimes very hard for him to figure out why he lost as a Terran player.
This is actually really interesting to talk about because I practice a lot with Neeb nowadays.
Yeah.
And first of all, I just want to say that Neeb is fantastic. Like he's actually fantastic StarCraft player and a really good friend. And he gives me a lot of advice. Like he actually helps me a ton. I just want to make that clear. And a lot of times when I'm asking him questions, he'll like go back and think about his Terran days because I think I'm at a very similar point where he was when he was Terran back in the day, maybe skill wise. I mean, maybe I'm a little bit better, but it's hard to say, right? Like it's different eras, different competition. But basically, point is, I have a lot of the same issues that he was experiencing.
Yeah.
And he can give me like really fantastic answers on like how to deal and think about certain things. And he's just really thoughtful. Like I think Neva is one of the smartest people I've seen.
Yeah, he's actually very kind as well. When I was learning Protoss, I always really try to give credit to Showtime and Neeb as the two players who helped me the most with answering even some dumb questions I would ask, but always, yeah, you could learn about how they thought about the matchup by the way they would talk about things. You'd propose a question and they'd be very good at kind of breaking it down and thinking back through why you make the certain decisions and exactly how you do that. So, so he was kind of talking about how like, it was harder for him to read things, why he lost games as Terran and that sort of thing. And sometimes, what did I do wrong? And I think it's the nature of the Terran race that you've got both high damage, long range units with low hit points. Every Terran army is like a glass cannon, right? So I feel like you've got fights that go very drastically differently based on very small factors, right? It can be if you're hit just slightly faster, you crush a fight, or if you're positioned right up around that ledge with the siege tanks, you kill everything and none of your stuff dies. But if you get caught in the open or unprepared, it goes drastically the other way. So I think why a lot of Terran players are known as the whiny race, and why even myself, I sometimes go, how did I get so destroyed in this game? I think it's like the thing a lot of Terran players struggle with is just this constant, oh no, you played so bad, you just got one-sidedly crushed here, is what it looks like on surface value a lot of the time when you lose a game. But it actually could be a very fine margin that lost you that game.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And this is just my personal opinion. I don't know how accurate it is, but I feel very similar to what you were saying. Like, I don't think that Terran's imbalanced when it comes to like Terran's weaker than the other races. I mean, obviously you can have certain arguments about that with Zerg, but I couldn't care less. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying though is I think Terran gets punished the hardest for their mistakes. So a lot of times things feel really overwhelming bad when things aren't going well. And I think that's also why you see like, I don't know. I think it's why you see Terrans do so poorly, like especially in the foreign scene at big events. Because if you're not at your 100% and you're feeling a little bit nervous and you're even playing against someone a little bit better, things are going to look horrible if you're not 100% because you just get punished so hard for your mistakes. And it's not that Terrans, as I said, imbalanced or weaker than the other races. It's just that it just feels like the nature of the race. And that's something that I've accepted very early on. So like I almost never balance wine. Unless I'm just balance wine to balance wine. But generally speaking, that's the way I view it. I don't really think Terran is weak. I just think it's really difficult.
I think everybody has to kind of let the excess steam out of the valve sometimes and just say something. You make a comment or you're like, man, this is so unfair, whatever. Sometimes you got to do that. But yeah, you're definitely not the player who's then, in a 2020 response Twitter thread with a random fan arguing in response to one of your tweets after losing a tournament, like some players will do. They're arguing with some random fan who's like, no, actually, I think Terran's great or something. And you're there and you're like, no, it's wrong. It's bad. It's this thing, though, where, yeah, it is a bit more punishing. And specifically to that point, I think did you watch Maru versus Parting last season's round of 8 GSL?
Yeah, I watched.
I think that was a series where it was really interesting because when Maru was dictating, I mean, he looked unfair at points in the game. In some of those games where I was like, man, Parting just can't touch him. Like, he's crushing. But we got to see the knife's edge that rests upon when Parting picked him apart in some of the games as well. I think it was the Eternal Empire game.
That was a great game to watch.
Oh, man. There was like, because you just saw like Zealots come in here. The bio stims to intercept and start something. The Zealots pull back. More Zealots come in here. Prism slides in the back. You had like so many distractions going on, and Maru's handling it perfectly. And Parting's just stacking these blocks up, one on top of the other. And at a certain point, they all crumble because Maru could not micro 5 locations at once well enough and was kind of always being just a little bit out of position and having to react. And he just wasn't quite on top of everything. And I'm pretty sure this is the right map. I think it was Eternal Empire, where it kind of felt like Parting just created enough problems consecutively in different areas and all these different things to the point where the DTs start doing massive damage, the Zealots start doing massive damage, the Disruptor shots start landing, and you kind of see...
A lot of times with the Protoss, you're just throwing away units in the Terran, but as soon as you find that one weakness in the defense, it just snowballs instantly. And I think that's kind of like what Parting did really well. Parting... It's really interesting because I think he hit something that I find difficult describing it, because whenever you play against Zerg and you find yourself in a situation, I'm not sure how to describe this exactly, but whenever you play against Zerg and you're in a situation where you're sitting back and you're doing nothing and you're letting Zerg do whatever they want, the game feels horrible. And there's something you can point to for why it feels horrible, right? You can say, okay, there's creep spread. And you've given up complete control of the game, and that allows Zerg to have faster movement. They can map vision, and there's something you can very clearly point to for why it feels awful.
Yeah.
But for Protoss, I'd say that exists, but it feels even worse than creep spread. But there's not something that I can exactly point to or say why it feels so bad if you get into these situations. So, for example, where the Protoss player is playing 4 gate blank every game. And then they'll mix in a 2-base DT build, they'll mix in 2-base Charge Lot, 2-base Storm, 2-base Colossus, like whatever it is, right? Protoss will mix in all these builds. And if you just decide to turtle and let them do whatever they want, and you just give them complete control of the game with Stalkers, and they go into Disruptors, and they have Colossus, like the situations, if you just objectively look at it, and it's kind of tough to describe this because I'm not giving you, we aren't looking at like actual games. This is just kind of like, generally speaking, but you're in these situations where Protoss has low econ, but they have this army with a lot of Stalkers where they can kite you. They have map control, and they have Disruptors. And it's like, even though you're ahead in every way, you have a better army, you have better upgrades, you have better economy, the game just feels horrible to play out in those situations where Protoss has complete control with like Stalkers or Disruptors or like whatever it is. And it's hard to point towards something exactly like creep spread, right? But there's a lot of situations. Well, I guess not a lot, but there's certain situations where I find myself feeling extremely uncomfortable against Protoss. But there's also other games where I can just play standard, hit a 2-2 timing, then go into 3-3, and it feels fine. I don't know. It's weird. It's one of these weird things.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And I see this in the TVP meta now, right now more than ever, where we're not seeing the double forge defensive Protoss, right? We were seeing that for a long time, where it was more a question of, can I stop the Protoss getting to 85 probes and, Storm and Colossi or Mass Disruptor and yada yada. But now we're seeing these Protoss players who are just, they're, it's kind of like, a lot of the time it's almost even a defensive all-in. So
it's really weird because they put themselves in unfavorable situations where they just have a worse economy and worse upgrades, but it's just weird and it just feels uncomfortable. I don't know.
Trap versus Innovation.
Trap Innovation, Party Mario.
The 4-player map. Trap was ahead, solid opening, defended the pressure. Doesn't go past 53 probes for the entire game. Goes up to 4-base, 5-base. It's like, not 53 probes. And he's just waiting on the map with Mass Zealot. And I'm like, what is this? This is bad, isn't it? But Inno's in his corner and he just doesn't have the same information. and he keeps going out, and then 20 zealots are hitting a mineral line, and then the other zealots are flanking around half of his army, and we're seeing this all the time now. We're seeing so many of these series where the Protoss players are, they're denying your information. They're constantly like, am I going to go? Am I going to go? And the Terran players are often losing when ahead. As you mentioned, you can be ahead, but you don't know what's going on out there. And then that one really prism gets in the back.
Exactly what I'm talking about is the TYZ series from TSL. That series, Zess is losing every single game and he wins 3-0. Like, it's just incredible how like those things go sometimes. Like
the DT blink on the tanks on Zen.
Yeah, like he's so far behind, has a horrible army, horrible upgrades, and then just wipes TY and then kills him. Like, I don't know. It's just really weird situation.
Those were the most terrible example of that as well, where it was like Zess was so behind in every game.
He's taking a 7-minute third for no reason, and like, I don't know. It's just one of those really weird things. I struggle with it because I can't just point towards creep spread like I can with Zerg, right? Because versus Zerg, it makes complete sense why certain things feel awful, right? Or if you're playing as Terran and you're turtling on Raven Viking and the bio player just has 4 medevacs outside your base, right? Like they have control of the map and they're just dictating the pace of the game. But with Protoss, it's just I don't know. It's strange.
It's really odd, yeah. So the funny thing is, I do feel like it more than anything, it's stressing the calmness and the mental capabilities of Terran players. So I guess what I mean by this, right, is I don't think they're necessarily the highest percentage plays, and there are still games where the Terran gets the push going, doesn't let the harassment, slide 20 zealots onto their production or whatever, and does win the game quite methodically, right? And there's also some really great brutal SCV pools that are being mixed in quite a lot, which is always something that I think needs to be mixed in just with the way Protoss as a race likes to kind of get a read of what's on and be as greedy as possible with powering up and then getting the units at the right time and then just exploding into an unstoppable lead. That's a lot of how Protoss players play PvT. But I think what happens, right, is you actually aren't... the hard thing is gathering the correct information. So I guess when I do look at the best players in that matchup, and don't get me wrong, they're not immune to losing to these things, but the Innovations, the Clems, the Marus, it is this ability to just be so careful at all stages and not take anything for granted, right? Like there's often times where a player's ahead and they are going for a push without actually, they're going, well, I've defended kind of 2 waves of bullshit, or this Protoss is committed to this. He must be investing in more probes. And it's often not the case. Protoss players are hanging out in the mid-50s on probes almost every game at the moment. And they're kind of going, cool, you're going to push into my storm drop zealots around? Hells yeah. Crush that army, counterattack, and win the game. And I think we're seeing tactical scans to check gas counts and probe counts a lot more. I've seen Clem scan more bases in the past month in TVP than I've ever seen him scan before. He is obsessed with scanning those bases and checking what's up. Whereas I'm seeing players who are very good, but a little bit like below, like not as good as you. I'm seeing a lot of like the semi-pro Terrans especially. They defend okay, the chaos, but they're always very reliably doing the same sort of push across the map. Like, I gotta go, let's go across this map. And they're almost always ambushed in the middle of the map before they get the nice siege up. And they're just at a point where they really should be sitting purely defensively because they're on the same work account, better upgrades than the Protoss. Yeah. And they're kind of, getting over on there. I guess the other extreme end of that is TY, who will often play where he just doesn't move out and just camps and just builds tanks and spreads his units out and does very light harassment. And he tries to be unbreakable, but we've seen him broken by very well executed charge lot attacks and storm drop attacks. And we've also seen him in that Zest series, unfortunately not close out the games, which looked like he should be able to. One of them, it was mass blink DTs. Another one, I think it was mass blink DTs as well. I mean, those were, I think, special scenarios, but I guess I'm obviously rambling because I'm kind of just thinking about this whole problem and this weird thing we've seen in that matchup where it feels like Terran players are getting pinned in their corner and aren't able to figure out what the Protoss is doing. And as Terran players, we feel an urge to go and do a sharp push to not let them get away with, squeezing out the double upgrades or the storm or whatever, the 4th base and the 20 extra probes. Or there's a lot of those things. But I feel like we could almost, as Terran players, blindly choose to play a much more defensive turtley option and go to the late game because so few Protoss players are themselves going to the 80 probe count. Even 70 probes seems like a rarity right now.
Yeah, I think exactly what you said is the exact conclusion that I've reached. I just play in a lot of situations. Well, for the situations that feel fine, right? I'll play on a normal game. I'll hit my +1 timing. I'll then hit a 1-1 timing potentially, and then I'll hit a 2-2 timing, and I'll just play out a game normally. But for those specific uncomfortable situations, like as you said, I just sit back defensive. I'll even reactively go into tanks and just commit to like, okay, I'm going to late game. And then what I'll do there is I'll just make 5 to 8 tanks, turtle up on 5 bases, have 2 sets of bio on the map. I start getting 3 Ghost Academies and start nuking, and that's kind of the way that that's my solution to that situation that I was talking about. But I definitely think that's the best approach.
It's still not our favorite because we don't really like pressing the game to the point where disruptors and storm enter the field, right? And there's a lot more comeback mechanics for the Protoss when big DT run-bys start coming in as well. So you're a bit afraid to go too late, but there's definitely an adjustment there with just the standard TVP is we're being a little bit more passive because these Protoss are being so aggressive.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Cool. I think this is it's been a weird time in PvT where I'm watching from the sidelines and going, huh? Is this what it is now? Okay, this is different. And it's interesting from the Protoss side of things as well, because some Terrans are reacting with those tanks, and I've been working on really like the easiest way to play PvT, in my opinion, is to go Colossus and do a Colossus Charge Lot Archon timing attack. I think it's one of the most powerful. Like literally, for me, it's the equivalent of trying to do a 1-1 Roach Ravager timing against Terran, where I'm like, lol, let's see if this works.
I think an even easier way, what I do when I off face this Protoss, is every single game I just go to Twilight, I make 5 Stalkers, I make 2 Sentries, and then I have my third base saturated by like 5 minutes with double upgrades, and I just go A-click the Terran every single time. Like, there's very few Terrans on NA that I actually lose to. I don't know, I just make a lot of Zealots and A-click. It's fun.
It's a good style, man. It is a very good style. And, people like, I think they try to attack 2 front on with the Zealots, and it's like, no, like if you cut off the Terran's reinforce and also hit their rally point after they move out with like 10 Zealots, like those Terran pushes don't look very scary. The Terran gets so desperate that they're going to have to attack into your surrounder Zealots. And Zealot surrounds, man. 1-1 upgrades. And armor upgrade is still great. I think it's actually kind of hilarious that every Protoss is like, no, I can't make armor now. It's bad. And I'm like, oh, you sheeple. It's still a good upgrade.
Weird how it went from everyone went +2 armor, and now it's just +2 attack. I don't know. It's just the way things go.
I mean, I was talking about this with Estrella the other week, and I was like, I mean, Hero, it must be so upset. He only made attack upgrades and splash damage and hope the Terran screwed up. That was what he was doing for the last 2 years. This is his meta.
On the hero point, like people are finally catching up to his 2-base storm charge lot, like because that's like so strong in the current meta. Because like every Terran's going Raven tank reactively to stop 4-gate blink, DTs, 2-base Colossus. So what's the hard counter to Raven and tank? You just go 2-base storm charge and then you just A-click the Terran. If they attack you, right? But I mean, Hero was an innovator, man. Hero was ahead of his time.
Yeah, the cheesiest boy ever. Man, he's so funny as well in Legacy because he was always a micro-oriented player, but I felt like he was a bit more solid in Heart of the Swarm. And then in Legacy, I was like, you're just a giant cheeser. And I remember interviewing him like years back at one of the China events, and I was like, so like you're pretty cheesy these days, like like is this just the new style? You think this is the way to play Protoss? And he was like, no, like people keep saying I'm so cheesy now. He's like, I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm going to macro. And then he like goes into a series and he's just cannon rushing and doing all these crazy all-ins. And I'm like, yeah, sure, buddy. I'm like, yeah, so many players are so insincere in their interviews. He's like, no, I'm going to show you the best macro you've ever seen. I'm like, I don't know if this is like subtle Serral style trolling or they're just actually like, cause sometimes cheeses are very unself-aware, and they're like, oh, this is my good macro build. I'm like, that's not a macro build. That's a two base all in. What are you talking about, man?
That's definitely something that happens.
So yeah, we've kind of talked a bit there about kind of learning and Terran and the problems with kind of figuring out how to improve a little bit. So the day 9 dailies, I think, and I still direct people to the day 9 dailies. I'm not sure Do you remember if there was any specific section of the dailies of like the like fundamentals ones or a certain playlist that you went to? Because I still recommend the Day 9 daily, but I'm not really sure which videos, because I've like read transcripts of a few episodes.
There's definitely certain ones that just teach you like fundamentals. Like I remember some specific ones where like how to have like 100% win rate, and it was like going over Happy's games, and then there was the APM and mechanics. And it was just like talking about mouse accuracy and stuff. And then there was like a hockey's one. I'm not sure. I just like eyeballed it and clicked on the ones I thought were.
If anyone,
they were definitely.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone watching or listening is a bit more of like an archivist, you know, a librarian of the videos, and especially I know I do have some big Day 9 fans who've been part of the channel for a while. If any of you guys are listening and you do have any links to like specific sections of those ones, because Day 9 is such a library of videos, and it's kind of the same thing to a much smaller extent with like the Pig Daily and other things I've done where I'm like, oh yeah, there's a several hundred videos you can look at. With Day 9, it's like 600 dailies or something crazy, an insane number of them. But there are some amazing ones where you can, you can get amazing tips out of it. Like just okay, like let's not, you know, like there's a great video. And I've actually been making fun of it because everyone takes it too literally, where Day 9's like, don't queue up more than one unit at a time. And I keep coaching people in Gold League who are, it's like 7 minutes into the game and they queue one worker up at a time. And I'm like, no, buddy, like you got too much to do. You got to queue up, especially the Protoss says they drop a chrono on 3 bases and they queue 1 probe on each base. And I'm like, no, you should queue like 4, dude. You've got 80 APM. You need to queue up more than 1 at a time. Like there is a solid point behind what Day 9 says there, but you need to understand the meaning for it. It's like in the early game, only ever 1 unit at a time. As you progress, you get more tasks. You need to start to batch things up a little bit more. But I mean, it's invaluable. As you said, the mechanics ones, he's talking about, okay, try not to be scrolling all the time. You know, click on your minimap or double tap a control group.
Like those things are just good habits to learn. And I think it's really, like, as I said earlier, like my entire focus is on developing good habits. And I basically just play whenever I want to play. And as long as I'm in a focused mindset, then I'll play. And I don't know, I'll just focus on not, like, if I'm just playing awful, I just won't play the game at all. That's just something I focus on a lot. And there's so many things that you can do to focus on building good habits. You just need to like think, like just, I feel like people just don't think for like enough. You know what I mean? If you just take a moment and think about things that you're doing in StarCraft and things that are bad habits, like one of the most interesting things, like I've taken a lot of long breaks because like StarCraft's pretty stressful, right? Like whenever I have really bad results, it's like, I remember after Montreal, that was such an awful event for me. I just like stopped playing for like 6 months. But like, even after not playing for so long, first of all, you just have a fresh approach once you come back. And it's really easy to fix your habits if you just think about it, right? Like there's so many habits that you have that you can just fix if you just think about it a lot. You know what I mean? Like I feel like thinking about things is always the way that I've solved things. You just think about it a lot. Like a really good example of that is just the way that you rally your units. You know what I mean? Like that's such an easy thing to fix if you just think about it. Like how to rally your units, where to rally them. How do you rally your SCVs to your natural? Do you, I don't know, pull off mules before they expire? There's just a lot of things like that. Right? I think if you just spend some time to think about these small things that you can fix, you can fix them.
Yeah, and taking the time to do that, there's a very big difference in game, decisive, confident, just do it, you know, follow your play by feel, go. Don't overthink it. But when you're between games, when you're after games, when you're in the replays, you absolutely need to take that time. And especially when you're in your practice, like, you know, you're not necessarily thinking about how to address an underlying habit with how you control group your units in a tournament. But in between the tournaments, after a ladder game, taking the time to do that is so huge. And I think it's often we get in the habit of seeing the whole problem as so big in StarCraft. It's like, well, that's too big, or maybe even there's so many facets to it. For me in the past, sometimes it's been, okay, I want to be efficient with my learning. I want to find the biggest factor that lost me a game, that put me in the bad position, the earliest mistakes that happened that kind of piled up, and fix those. And don't get me wrong, that's the highest impact thing to fix a specific loss. But what's far more important than that is always systemic problems. So if you're putting yourself in a situation where you're consistently doing a bad thing because of other pressure, just fixing that one game, you've got to try and find a way to fix the system. And if that is, well, I always rally to my army, and then this zealot run by or ling run by always kills me because I don't have units rallied to the depot that's lowered, or I have my whole wall lowered rather than a single depot, or whatever fundamental basic thing it is. If you're not fixing that, things can get really, really hard. I know a lot of players are like, no, I just gotta play more. I just gotta grind. I just gotta get in the rhythm. There's a lot of easy traps you can fall into where you're not taking the time to really stop and look at all the little details of the game, right?
Yeah, and that's, as you said, like they're easy traps because they're not wrong either, right? Like just playing the game is the fastest way to improve. Play the game, practice. And on that note that you were talking about, like I remember you had I don't remember what it was exactly, but what was it? There was a YouTube video. It was Scarlet. She was coaching your Terran.
Oh yeah.
And honestly, I learned some things from that. And like, I remember she was talking about like certain things where if you just fix these small mechanical things, like even if it's just like 1% across all matchups, like that's a huge improvement, right? And one thing from that specifically that I remember that I fixed like as soon as I watched that was just rallying the SCV and automatically taking the SCV and right clicking it and perfectly rallying it, so you don't have to like wait like an extra second for the gas. And that's just like something like, well, okay, I can fix that really easily if I just think about that.
And that couple seconds off the Reaper, an extra probe kill, something that consistently can be an extra probe kill every TVP. That's amazing. That's a huge help.
Also, I think one of the underused things is just rallying your Reaper. There's a lot of maps where if you just right click your racks across the map, the rally is going to be bad. But if you specifically rally it, then it's going to be there like a second or two faster, and that's actually a pretty big deal. I think not a lot of people think about that.
I think I'm just gathering a few of these links while we talk about them to make sure. I will put those in the description to a few of these different things we mentioned. There's also, someone in chat was saying, well, specifically, they're a big Day 9 fan, that the newbie Tuesday playlist is where most of what we talked about was. So I'll link that up as well. So yeah, I mean, I remember that Scarlet, I was just complaining about TVP or something, and she was just like, you're effing everything up, stop being a bitch, kind of thing. Like, let's play some customs, and your Reaper is consistently 5 seconds late, and like, let's fix that. And I was like, well, it's this thing and this thing, because like I'm always talking about my reactor, is it on time, and are my Marines on time, because the depth pressure was giving me so much trouble. And it's crazy. Just the tightness of the openings there makes a big difference. Shift clicking the Reaper so it rallies down, making sure your workers mine gas from the right side, being just a little bit more attention to detail. Oh, build the depot that's going to be next to the barracks, not with the little space for the reactor first, so that there isn't the travel time of an extra second. That's 1 second delay on your barracks, 1 second delay on your Reaper. And for everyone who's ever, dealt with an adept coming in 2 seconds before your second and third Marine are out, or, it's so much harder to deal with than if you've got those 2 extra Marines waiting ready and you're suddenly saying, get the hell out of my base. So it's crazy how many of those little things there are. And this is where I do think if we had, $13 billion annual prize money in StarCraft 2 or something insane, obviously we'd have whole teams around each player, which would be the ideal environment. You'd have people breaking that down and looking for it. And as it is, we don't have a vast amount of money in StarCraft 2. We wish we did, but things go up and down in the esports scene. And as it is, it's a lot about, are you talented as a player? But so much is also how motivated are you, and how good are you at consistently improving, focusing on something, getting better at it, moving on to another thing, focusing on it, getting better. And I do think a big superpower is to say, don't get overwhelmed by the matchup as a whole. Don't get overwhelmed by this as a whole, but just the ability to put on your blinders and just kind of systematically go, okay, I don't know what I could do better in this TVZ. Let's look at my Reaper timing. Let's look at how perfect my opening is. Let's look at exactly when my Hellions pop. Let's refine the details of my build. Okay, let's look at my habits with setting up my pushes and how I control group my army, or how I'm spreading my Marines, or what technique am I using for focus firing Banes? I've been doing this forever. When was the last time I thought about how I focus fire Banes? And am I doing it the best way? Should I be focus firing more? Like that. It's just, there's so many layers of detail to get into, right? So I think the only problem, or the only mistake you can make, is thinking there's nothing you can do, right? Like the one mistake you can make. The worst possible thing. you're like, oh, what else can I do? And it's like, oh, no. Even you as a player who's sitting there at rank 1 on the NA ladder, when you're laddering, you have so much you can improve on every day. Every single player does.
Whenever I ladder, I can always just get better. Like there's never just like, I'm never at a peak. You know what I mean? And one interesting thing about that, one thing that I noticed like massively in my gameplay is I practiced a lot with Neeb, and I realized that like my TVP isn't bad, right? I think TVP is actually one of my stronger matchups.
Yeah.
But I realized this consistent trend where I would have a good early game. Like I actually have like a really strong early game TVP. Like I'm really fast. I always have to get the maximum out of every single unit, and I macro at home like near perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
But then whenever I get to mid game, he just has way better army control than me. And like I didn't even realize that his army control could be that much better than me. And I would just consistently lose in these situations. It's just kind of crazy, like how many levels of skill there are in StarCraft. You know what I mean? Like there's just always another level to go if you put your mind to it.
I really like following a bunch of other sports and things for inspiration and listening to coaches and different things, because I always realize I'm like, oh God, like I really, like whenever people are like, oh, you're such an expert at StarCraft, Pig, I want to ask you about this. And I'm like, to some extent, guys, to anyone out there listening, it's like, it's the same thing as when someone says, I want to get good at StarCraft when they're brand new. I want to be Diamond one day. And they get to Diamond and they go, I'm utter trash. I can't believe I once thought Diamond was good. As I get higher, all I see is just how lacking I am compared to where I could be. I see all the mistakes in my play. And I don't think that ever really stops. I think you just keep knowing more, and you keep realizing how little you know compared to the vast ocean of knowledge. And StarCraft is such a complicated game. And like one of the things that I think about as a concept is something, I really like the Joe Rogan podcast he did with John Danaher, who's a jiu-jitsu coach who kind of broke a lot of the meta in jiu-jitsu and kind of developed new different weight techniques and things. And he's like this academic guy. And what I love when you listen to him talk about that in that podcast is how the people he trained, everyone always saw, and I'm butchering this was a long time since I listened to this. They kind of like talked about something like being on your back was always seen as the bad position. So, you wanted to be on top because there was more you could do from there. But being on the bottom, they would only train certain plays to get out of it, right? And it was always, you had to be making a play. You could never just be on the bottom, just treading water, right? Just hanging out there and playing the game. It always had to be, you have to make a play. And if that's getting blocked, you don't have a lot of play from there. I'm probably butchering this or combining a few different conversations. But essentially, that same concept of sometimes we look at a point in StarCraft and we say, oh, I'm not comfortable here. Like, I feel like I need to do something, right? It's like, I'm thinking of Zerg examples because I'm more of a Zerg player, right? I'm thinking of like, okay, I've made Broodlords. I need to hit right now. If I don't trade right at this moment, I'm fudged. I need to force a fight. And you see players take a really awful fight because they feel this overwhelming pressure to make a play. And a lot of the time we can look at that as a zero-sum game where there's a point in a StarCraft match where we need to make a play or we're screwed. And we feel like there's
I actually remember the specific game. You like destroyed me on ladder, and then that exact situation happened.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I remember that. It was on Nightshade, I believe. Like, you did this 1-1 roach timing, destroyed me, and I was like, all right, let's just turtle. I was just turtling, and then you got your Broodlords out, and I just base traded you. It was just one of those situations.
Exactly. Yes, I remember this game. I think I put this on YouTube as well as one of my few losses that I put up, where I was like, oh, damn, yeah, got way too committed to this one thing. And it's funny. That actually happens a lot, like in for a lot of players where I'm like, sometimes you just see a player who's on another level and you realize it's like, well, this situation doesn't look advantageous for them. It looks kind of bad. But, well, if you just try to force it, you're going to turn it into a loss, right? But if you can find a way to be comfortable in that situation and realize there's some low percentage but potential plays that you can make out and just get comfortable in that zone and say, look, I'm not making a game-winning play right now. Here's option A. It might not be the greatest. Here's option B. It's not the greatest. But I'm going to learn to understand those options and have my eyes open. And steadily, I'm going to get better at navigating those scenarios. And I just remember that specific conversation had sparked that in me where I was like, damn, I'm probably doing that in a lot of situations where I go, no, 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 this isn't all in. Like, I got to break them here or something. And then you look at like a Bly game or a Haas game or someone, and you're like, like, how many times does Bly make comebacks? I've seen him do it against you in EPT. He does it to Eutherm all the time. He's so dead. And his 2 Ravagers pick off like 6 depots in your wall somehow. And then he's running around, he's backstabbing. And then at some point, he does this wild counter attack, manages to separate your Marines from your tanks. Once your tanks are gone, suddenly you feel like, shit, I got to push. The number of times he has forced a Terran player with an almost pure Marine army to go 6 screens deep on creep. The Terran's on 3-3, Bly's on 1-1, Bly's on 55 drones or something terrible because he's been hemorrhaging from drops. All he has is the whole map covered in creep, which is applying this pressure to the Terran. And he's taken out their kind of fancy tech splash damage units, and he's done enough chaos that the Terran's like, I got to go use this army. And then it's just one big Bane surround and he wins. And I'm like, oh shit, he's found a way to be comfortable in such a bad position. And he does so many little maneuvers to make his opponent uncomfortable and to force the mistakes out from his opponent. And it's incredible. And it really, I think, makes me realize how simple-minded I am about a lot of situations in StarCraft where, you know, I put it down as saying, oh, well, fundamentally, he's ahead and you're behind. And that's true. But you can understand it on a much deeper level than that. There's so many more facets to StarCraft.
Yeah, and I think recently, specifically on the Bly topic, like, I feel like I didn't really respect him very much as a player for a long time. But more recently, like, he's actually a very strong player. Like, obviously, he's not the best mechanically, but
yeah,
he's definitely a lot better than I've ever given him credit for. I think, like as you were saying, like, he finds these ways in these situations that make you extremely uncomfortable. And he forces a lot of mistakes out of you. So yeah, I think Bly's a fantastic player when it comes to that.
Yeah, he makes so many comebacks. I don't count Bly out anymore. He's done it too many times to count. And you know, I've really become a Bly fanboy because he stays up for those EPT America Cups, and so I'm finally casting a lot of his games. Whereas, you know, he's an online guy. He performs very well in online tournaments, and I don't get to watch a lot of the European scene. So it's been a pleasure watching him. And we had him on a while back on the show, and he was talking about how, you know, for him, he just enjoys the game more when it's more of, a chess match, and he's kind of forcing play and counterplay, and he's forcing it, you know, and it's a tasteless style chess match where he's forcing weird situations, and he's understanding how to make plays that counter his opponent's plays. For him, just practicing a Serral build, you know, it's not the most exciting thing in the world, and it doesn't spark joy in him as a player. He's like, this is not my style, you know?
Yeah.
And I think StarCraft's incredible because it gives you this range where you've got different matchups, so many different play styles and strategies, and it's a very imperfect art. So, I mean, I'm on every day I watch Haas, I'm fascinated that one player could have such, you know, appalling fundamentals when it comes to anything that approximates a standard macro game, and yet have godlike micro in those situations that he understands, and these incredible understanding. He can look at a player, and just from seeing a few of their games, he's so quick at coming up with corners that he can cut. A lot of players suck at corner cutting.
Yeah, that's specific thing that you're talking about. Like, that's something that I think Masa is fantastic at. And I think the player who I've copied the most in StarCraft 2 is Masa. Like, I think Masa is my biggest inspiration, and I definitely play the most like Masa out of any Terran. I think either Masa or Euthermal I play the most like. And that's something that I learned a lot from Masa, because like I would think to myself, well, he doesn't play very much, yet he still wins like quite a lot, and he's consistently top forward in NA. He's doing something right, and that's something that like I looked a lot at.
Master is, yeah. I mean, every tournament I'm like, so you been practicing? He's like, yeah, I played a few games on this patch. And I'm like, what the hell, man? How are you still so good? Like, like I know players exaggerate when they're like, oh, I haven't really played much or whatever, but yeah, he's so good at that. Like I always giggle. One of the Challenger games last year where he's like 3cc into 2 starport BC and just like teleports 2 BCs in, and Scarlet just like leaves the game. And I'm like,
yeah, I remember that. That was sick.
I was like looking at this build.
How did he do it?
He had 1 Marine. I think that was like his only unit for like 6 minutes in this game. And then he's like, oh, I have a fully saturated third and like 2 BCs, and now another 2 BCs would be soon behind it in your main. And I'm like, this is so ridiculous. But Yeah, he cuts the corners where he can, and that's a special skill, which Haas excels at as well. You know, really just expert player at finding those moments where he can do that, and just get greedier off the opening. Um, Neeb, you know, I talk about Neeb as a player who he will always cut a corner. He will be greedy, but then he will immediately turn that greed into the sharpest, most bullshit pressure you've faced. Maybe not as much in PvT, but definitely in PvZ. It's a little bit of greed straight into keeping his opponent in check. And you're like, whoa, this is hitting harder than it normally does. You know, Parting does this a lot. That's why Parting is one of the best PvZ players in the world right now. It's because he's going to just not scout sometimes. He's going to just build a Stalker and no other gateway units and just hope you don't build Zerglings other times, you know? He's cutting these corners tactically, and it's a very, very interesting thing that you can do as a player. I never really do that as Terran outside of trying to cut the SCV scout. I'm very stiff, and I'm not a great Terran player by any means. It's much lower than my Zerg.
There's definitely a lot.
Yeah. I guess there is quite a bit of variety out there. What do you think about the proxy Blue Flame build in TVZ? I think it's kind of shit.
I've never used it.
Yeah.
Just like, I don't know. There's so many builds. There comes a certain point you're like, well, I don't know. I'm just not gonna use that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Proxy Axe is another one of those builds that like I almost never play just because I'm just not a big fan of Proxy Axing and specifically against Sir, just because like there's so many people already Proxy Axing in Sir.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. I would rather just play macro games, and do 3CC and do other stuff. I'm not a big fan of it.
Well, actually, so you knocked me out yesterday in EPT very simply. Then you went on, and Cham managed to. I couldn't believe he checked literally everywhere for a proxy racks in your game 3. I was number 1 surprised you went for the proxy racks, and I was number 2 surprised the guy who all-in'd really hard 2 games in a row, and you guys were tied up 1-1 that he checked for the proxy racks.
I'm not sure. Like, I mean, that specific tournament, I probably shouldn't have signed up because I wasn't. I didn't want to play that much. I kind of I played because like I don't know, like I just kind of played to play. But then
you weren't really in the
like,
serious mindset. You were kind of just like, just throw some builds out.
Yeah, I didn't want to play any builds that like I'm actually practicing for Scarlet. So I was like, well, I guess I'll just go fast 3x every game and then proxy X. If I win, I win, and if I lose, I lose. I'm not sure. It was one of those tournaments where I was like, I don't know. But it's also interesting that he scouted everywhere for it because like I never proxy X like almost ever.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is a sort of wild choice, but it's also the last thing I would expect if I was in Cham's shoes. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like Future's taking a bit of a gamble here. I really like it. And then I just see this drone go out and check everywhere, and I'm like, what the hell? I was like, oh my god, I can't believe he checked for that. Yeah, man.
It's just how it goes sometimes.
That's just how it goes. Of course, you mentioned matching up with Scarlet there in the bracket. So I'm actually going to open that up now on my PC and take a little look-see at it. You had a really good run. I think you only lost 1 series in the group stage, right?
Yeah, and the series I lost was extremely tragic. I don't know if you saw it, but it was like one of the biggest throws I've had in a really long time.
And was that to Estrella, right? Because Estrella was the only one undefeated.
Game 3, like I perfectly read him. Like I knew he was going to go DTs. I went blind Raven tank, no SCV scout. Completely shut it down, went across the map, and I have like a game-winning push. I'm up like 30 or so supply with a Raven, and he has 4 Stalkers, 3 Sentries, and barely a Colossus. And then I just like move my entire army into force fields and lose the Raven for free. And then like from there, I'm still ahead, but like I lost it at that point.
You're already in that. Yeah, you're like, did I just do this? Oh my god.
It was horrible. It was rough. But I don't think it matters too much because I think finishing first or second have too much of an impact. I mean, I think I'd rather play PvT, but I don't think it matters.
Yeah, who do you win the prize of? Do you get to play Scarlet or Neeb? Which one?
Yeah. Like, and at the end of the day, you just need to be at a really high level to beat either of them, so it doesn't matter to me.
Of course, you're facing Scarlet in the top of the bracket, Estrella and Neeb in the bottom of the semifinals, and then in the losers there is the 3rd and 4th place players: TLO, Nabshar, Nina, and Silky. Have you been impressed by any of the other NA talent? I feel like Silky's really been stepping up his game lately.
I mean, I think Silky's been insanely good for a very long time. I think some people know he's really good, but a lot of people still underrate him. Like, I think Silky is by far the best player of that bottom 4. Like, I'm way more scared of playing Silky than Namshar, Nina, or TLO. I don't know. I'm waiting for Silky to have like his really sick tournament. I know he destroyed me for WSG one time. Like he beat me for like 4.5 grand or something, but like people don't really remember that. I don't know. I think Silky's insanely good. I just don't know when he's gonna break out fully.
You know, I mentioned this yesterday on stream. I didn't realize there was a separate Chinese Silky. So I always thought that Silky was like a Chinese student living in America or something like that. It's, I got so confused when I see Silky playing EPT China, DreamHack Masters China, and I was like, how can he play both regions? And I was so confused. And then I like Wikipedia it and I was like, they're completely different humans. One is a Chinese guy and one is a California kid. Yeah, he's getting great, man. I mean, I'm happy to see that you and Australia are like, no. We're top 4 Europeans. Get the hell out of here. There was a couple of obviously TLO and Namshar both live in, I think, somewhere near Toronto, both in Canada.
Yeah, somewhere.
And yeah, them, you know, those are some really experienced, good Zerg players. So I'm just happy to see that you guys have been beating them pretty consistently.
I don't think they're particularly good when it comes to raw skill, but as you said, like they're veterans. Like they're always scared to play in tournament. Like if I lost them, I wouldn't be upset. Like I'd be like, okay, I understand. Now I just need to understand where I messed up when it came to tournament play. Because I think just raw skill wise, I don't think I should lose to them consistently. Like I think I'm a bit better. I'm definitely better than TLO when it comes to just straight up specifically TVZ. I think Namshar and I are a bit closer. I think Namshar has always had good TVZ. But it's definitely like those two, like they're just fantastic in tournaments. So like if I lost them, like it'd be completely understandable.
Yeah, they've got the plays, that's for sure. It's also always always a little bit wild playing against TLO. You know, it's like, all right, we're opening. What is it? Yeah, he'd go like 10 mutas in ZVT and then he'd just go Hydras and you're like, what? He's like, made you go Widow Mines. And you're like, what? This is such a bizarre way of playing. Very, very cool.
I think he even beat Special in some random, I don't remember what tournament it was. But like,
I think he beat Special in the EPT finals. I think it was one week. 3-2, I think. Or 3-0.
Maybe. I remember he beat him in something. I don't remember. I know that Bly beat Special in the EPT 3-2. I don't remember. I think it might have been a base straight tournament.
I feel like I cast it, so I think, or at least it happened one time. I'm not sure though.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know.
I could be wrong.
Exactly.
I could be wrong. Yeah. Anyways, that's cool. So, in terms of growing up here in the NA scene and stuff, let's go back to that a little bit because I wanted to talk about that today, and we've already been going for a while, so I don't want to miss talking about the NA scene and that sort of stuff. You've grown up here in it. You're 18 now. Sorry, your birthday is March, so you've just turned 18 a few months ago. So you finished high school last year, or?
Graduated this year.
Okay, when does the end of the year for school for you guys? Like, when do you guys graduate? Because it's different to here in Australia.
It's kind of weird right now. Like, I have some friends who graduated really early because of Corona. It's just kind of everywhere. Like some schools just straight up, just like they tried doing online classes, but then it was a bit too much, so they just let students graduate. I don't know. It's kind of everywhere.
Okay, fair enough. So you're finished school now. So what's the plan? Are we gonna see you stick with pro gaming for at least a few years? Have you talked to your parents about it or anything like that? Like, what is the outlook? What is the future of future?
Yeah, that's tough. That's something I consider a lot. Like that's something I think about a lot. It's really difficult to think through exactly what I want to do because I mean, I'm not really sure if I really can reach like an absolute high level in StarCraft because I'm not sure that I have that like super competitive drive to want to win and everything. Like I think that I'm pretty smart when it comes to improving. I think I have a lot of good traits when it comes to just improving in things.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I have that drive to reach an absolute peak level. So that's something I've been considering recently. And it's like, just going to college seems pretty lame. I'm not too interested in doing that. Getting a job also seems pretty lame. but it's like I'm not sure. What I'm kind of leaning towards is going to Korea towards the end of this year, if possible, and then just chill in Korea for a little bit. And then I'm not sure. Like I think at the very least, I'm just gonna take a year off just to
Yeah.
think about what I want to do with life. I don't know. It's kind of tough because like
Well,
I have a lot of older siblings and they've gone a lot of different routes. Like my oldest brother, like never went to college, and then he went to college like later on, and then took a really long time to finish it, like 5 years or something to finish it, and just did it really slowly. And like I mean, he was getting paid to finish college because like his work wanted him to have it. I guess that's something jobs want you to have like a degree. And then my oldest sister also didn't really finish. I think she got her 2 year and then didn't finish all the way, but she's doing fantastic. So it's like, and I have other older siblings where they did the whole thing where you just 2 years community college and then 2 years out of college, and they go through all that. I don't know. Like I've all my older siblings have done different things with college,
yeah.
and the impression that I get is that it's kind of pointless besides the degree, and you use a lot of money. So it's like I don't know. I'm not
I
sure exactly.
Yeah, I mean, obviously my purely subjective university dropout here, but it's also, I mean, it's not technically free, but it is free until you've earned enough money to pay it back, and it's basically an interest-free loan essentially, in that it literally is our government just pays for school here, and then you pay them back only when you earn above an average salary. And then if you earn a shitload of money, you pay it back faster, but it's indexed less than inflation. It's like it's barely even a loan. So for me, when I hear about people like, when you're 18, it's like, I don't know. I still barely don't know what I really want to do a few years from now. That's a hard decision. I don't know. I take every day as it comes, right? When I was 18,
Yeah.
I certainly didn't fucking know what I wanted to do. I was like, I went to university just because it was like there, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
cool. And then I dropped out, and then I went back when I actually cared about it and put work into it. And then I got into StarCraft, and I dropped out again. Though the second time was actually a worthwhile investment, but I hear people who are like, yeah, I've got to go to this college because that's the path. And I think we're hearing more and more these days that it's like, especially if it's a big school in the US, it can cost so much money.
Yeah.
And the
It's really
loans are
expensive.
predatory. They're obscene. So I imagine like if you want to go, I also don't, I feel like there's a cultural thing. In Australia, let me know if it's the same in America, where people are like, oh, you only want to go to the really high esteemed universities. Like going to your local community college or your local city's college. People are like, oh, you don't go there. That's not internationally recognized like as
Um,
prestigious.
Maybe, but like I don't really care because just going to community college is the best way to do it. You save so much money.
Yeah.
So I don't really care. I don't pay too much attention to that. So if I were to do college, I would do 2 years of community college, and then I'm not sure exactly where I would go because there's a few options around me. But yeah, I'm not sure. And it's also weird because I feel like I talk to these people. I talk to my friends who aren't within like the esports world
Yeah.
and just normies. You know what I mean? Just normal people. And
Yeah.
it's like they just have this idea that you go to high school, you graduate, you go to college, you get a job, and that's just what you do. But I'm not too interested in that. It seems pretty. I mean, obviously people do that, but that's just not something I'm too interested in doing.
Well,
And
if
like,
you're not going into a classic profession, if you're not becoming an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer, one of these, there's a technical path you have to follow. You can't just go read the textbooks and say I'm a doctor, right? Like you've got to
yeah,
go to college. You have to. But outside of that, I think there's more and more people, especially in the younger generations and even the people in their 30s and 40s and so on these days, who are, I think, waking up to the fact that all the information's out there and that we have the internet now. And that, like, you met Pig Jr., you met my youngest brother, Noah,
yeah,
who's about your age. And he's like in his first year of university now. But even then, I've like talked to him a bit. I'm like, yeah, like, what do you want to do and stuff? He's just like, I want to, I don't know. He's like, I'd like to have money. Money seems like a good thing so you can do what you want in life. He's like,
yeah,
and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's cool. I'm like, if you're going to bother going to university, I'm like, I was saying to him, I'm like, it's got to be more about the experience of expanding your social networks and your critical thinking, your understanding of the world. But like, I think depending on how driven someone is, you can do exactly those same things using all the information we have at our fingertips now. Where if someone has like a cool idea for a business they're motivated to do at 18, I'm like, fuck yeah, just go do that. And if someone's doing something they're passionate about, and I think as long as they have like a learning mindset, I'm a big believer that you can macro at life. And what I mean by that is you can do something that doesn't directly immediately lead to you having success in the classic ideas. But if you're learning skills and you're enjoying it and you're like actually becoming smart at how you approach problems and stuff, which StarCraft is such a great tool for teaching you to do because it's such a hard problem. You're always going to come out of it and just like be able to like be confident at problem solving and learning new skills and developing yourself because you've done it in a competition with so many variables, so much hidden information in every game, so much trickery, and the other guy's just trying to trip you over the whole time and trying to trick you. And a lot of skills in real life aren't like that, right? There's an easier way to learn how to get really good at carpentry. Like there's not, you're there and you're trying to saw the wood and some guy's coming and kicking you and like trying to push you over while you're doing it. So I think it's something where I like that you're kind of just at the stage, like, I'm not even sure, what I want to do, but, take time off, go to Korea and have a mix of thinking about it and playing as well. Do you think you would maybe set a like goal where you're like, let's see if I can earn X money or place in the top of this big tournament, and that would motivate me to continue playing?
The only goal I've had with money was to earn more than QXC. Just because he was the highest earning player. Actually, I don't know. Have I earned more than him yet? I actually don't know.
C2 earnings, QXC, Googling it.
That was the only earning goal that I've had, was just to earn more than QXC. Oh, I'm not quite there. I'm like 1,000 off. After this WCS season, or after this EPT season, I'll have more. I'll be satisfied. But the question was, can you reiterate that one more time?
Like, so,
on the tip of my mind.
Yeah, so basically, like, would you set a goal?
Okay.
Would you go to Korea and just kind of sink yourself into the life and say, we're going to give it a couple of years? Or are you just kind of thinking you'd more just take it as you're like, I'm going to go, I'm going to play, I'm going to sink myself into the game. And as long as I'm enjoying it and I'm motivated, I'll keep going?
Yeah, like that's what I was talking about earlier, where it's like, I'm not sure if I really can reach the elite level, like absolute peak level, because I just don't know if I have that drive. Because obviously I think when I'm focused on something and I'm motivated, it's fantastic. Like I improve a ton. Like I think I'm very good at improving. Like I've reached a pretty high level in like the majority of games I've played. And I'm always really interested when I'm committed to it. It's just that, I don't know, it's tough. Like what I've done this year is that for specifically just for 2020, I have no goals at all for results. My only goal for 2020 is to develop like healthy lifestyles, like healthy, like exercising, consistent sleep schedule, and just developing things that are healthy to allow me to succeed within StarCraft. Then I was thinking maybe for 2021 and 2022, I'll focus more on results, but I'm not sure. Like,
yeah,
it's tough, and like everything's RNG, doesn't really matter anyway. I don't know.
Well, I mean, with tournament brackets, I was talking to Australia about the same thing because I was like, hey, how long are you going to commit to this? And Australia was kind of saying, I don't know, as long as I'm enjoying it. Basically, he was like, look, I don't feel like going and just getting a job yet. And he graduated and he was just saying like, I'm enjoying the game. And as long as I'm enjoying it, I'm going to keep doing it. And for him, he's really moved his focus to not be results oriented, where he's kind of said,
I think results oriented is not a healthy mindset to think about things.
It's like it can be good on the big picture for a review once in a while, right? For like choosing your direction. You're like, hey, there's got to be some tracking of progress, but it should absolutely be big picture and kind of normally your face is right in front of your results. You want to step back and go, let's look at the big picture. Do I feel I'm improving? Not necessarily did I win this one tournament, but over 2 years, was I getting consistent results? Were those results improving? And also, more importantly, do I feel like I'm developing like those good habits you talked about? Like those can be an important building block. And with improvement at anything, it can be a long plateau and then a sudden jump in improvement, right? There can be like just flat, no change. Sometimes even you go down a bit, and you can't be staring at that every little result. Every time it dips down a bit, you can't freak out.
What's really interesting about this is I feel like my career, or whatever you want to call it, has been like really unique because I feel like I've always peaked way above my skill level, and
Yeah.
then the following months, my skill level will rise to where that was for where my peak was. And I think that's always been
Mm.
consistent for me, right? So like I think I've never failed to qualify for the NA Challenger, and obviously that's not like the biggest feat, but I think my first time qualifying, I probably wasn't that skill level yet, but like I qualified right away. I didn't choke in the tournament. I was really happy about it. And then from there, I had the Cheesadelphia Miracle Run where I just destroyed a Cheesadelphia and won it. And it's like my skill level was nowhere near high enough in that tournament. But I somehow like I almost lost to Rob in the round of 16, right? I had a 2-3 series or a 3-2 series against him.
Mm.
And then I don't know what happened. I just like went on the tournament. I didn't choke, and I won this tournament. It was like I peaked way above my skill level. And then the following months I improved up to that skill level. And I feel like that's kind of the way it's been. I feel like the only exception to that, well, even another example was my TSL qualification. Like I think, like man, even before TSL, I was in such an awful mindset. Like I was in like a really bad place mentally, and like the qualifier before the one that I qualified,
Yeah.
I lost to Vanya 2-0 in like awful games, and I lost to Ridley, and it was just horrible. You know what I mean? Like they were just awful games. I was super tilted. And then I played the next one. I lost to Bly. I was extremely tilted. I was like, oh my God, I was forced to play on Europe during this NA qualifier. I was in a horrible mindset, right? And I just somehow make this like miracle run the lower bracket where I beat like Cham, Shadone, Neeb, Hellraiser, Namshar, Denver, and maybe one other person. And it's like,
Holy shit.
I don't think I was anywhere near that skill level. But like after that, I've improved so much since TSL. And like I actually think I've gotten insanely good recently. I just feel like that's been a weird thing with my StarCraft career where I'll have these really high peaks way before I'm actually at that skill level, and then my skill will develop to that level. I'm not sure.
I can see it. It's like that. That's why, it's so important to have that balanced approach, right? Not be hanging on every result, but looking at that big trend in the long term.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that idea of I like what you said about, the goals are let's develop good life habits. You're not in school and you're doing your own thing as a pro player. And there's a lot of just life skills that get developed at like the phase you're at in your life, right? Where it's just like, all right, yeah, like learning how to prioritize what you enjoy the most.
Yeah.
Having the right mix of socializing and not doing, too much StarCraft, but then also being focused and enjoying StarCraft and vibing with it and like really, being able to like go, damn, like I'm lucky. I get to play this game I love every day. This is sick. I'm living in one of the best countries in the world. And, I got a good support system around me and stuff. Like I think the one thing is if we're hanging out here, even if you're watching or listening to this show, we're all probably some of the luckier people in the world, right? And sometimes I lose perspective. I get stressed out about things, and I try to remind myself, like, if I went back 200 years or something, everybody's life was infinitely shitter than my life. Like for the vast majority of human history, it's been like, can I get food in my belly, or am I going to die of a disease or something? And I don't mean to belittle our problems and the challenges we face day to day, but it's nice sometimes to just put it in perspective and be like, oh yeah, shit. Like let's be kind of grateful for what I have.
I think that's a huge thing I focus on, right? Like as you said, like there's just so much, and like even though I have like all the issues with my own life, like everyone has their own issues with their life, but I'm still in such a fortunate situation where I have a house to live in, I have food. I mean, my education hasn't been the best, but like I still live in an era where I can make up for that. So it's like there's just so much to be grateful for, and as long as you put your mind to whatever you're interested in, like you can always make the most of it. So I completely agree with that.
So I wanted to ask, in terms of the habits and stuff, and this is something that fascinates me because it's been a big part of my life with slowly, steadily developing little bits of discipline that have massively improved parts of my life. And a lot of it's not even discipline. It's more just about forming good habits, which is very different to discipline. It takes discipline to form the habits, but once they're formed, it just happens. It's part of your daily habit. You don't even think about it. You've literally trained yourself like a hamster or like a dog to, fetch a ball. It happens without you having to think about it, which is a great little thing. But sleep, exercise, all these things are great. One thing before we move on to that though, and I wanted to ask, What about do you think much about the balance with like social life and pro gaming? Back in the day, a lot of players used to struggle with burnout. Everyone would say you need to train more. You're lazy if you're a foreigner. You need to play 12 hours a day. You need to be like a Korean in a team house. Have you ever thought about kind of that? Is your mic?
Yeah, I was talking to my mom for a second.
Oh, okay, no worries. I was like, oh, is the mic not working? No worries. Yeah. So do you ever think about that?
Can you say what exactly
Sorry.
you were asking?
So
I missed, like, the
social.
very end of it.
Yeah. That's all right. Shout out to Joe's mom. Raising some of the best StarCraft talent out there. Social balance. A lot of players in the past used to burn out, and they used to be obsessed with this Korean ideal of 12 to 14 hours of practice a day, grind, mindless repetitions, force yourself through the inaction and just get more games in. And I've seen many players, I guess a few players who I think of that come to mind, Drogo and Sort of, are two players who I've seen go through a transformation in the last few years. They've become healthier, better sleep schedules. They've started going out more, hanging out with girlfriends and other friends and social circles, playing more other games they're having fun with. So, like, do you ever struggle with that balance? Do you spend much time hanging out with friends in real life? Do you mostly hang out playing games with online friends? Like, what's the balance like between pro gaming and social life?
Most of my social is online nowadays. Like, yeah, I don't talk too much to real life friends. I don't know. It's not something that was like intentional, just kind of happens. Like, I'm focused on StarCraft. I'm a bit stressed out with certain things. I just kind of focus on that.
Yeah.
So most of my social stuff online with NA StarCraft. I think first of all, I just want to say that the NA StarCraft scene, there's so many great people within it. Like, a lot of really great friends. So that's fantastic. But it's definitely something I try to think about a lot. Like, I try to spend a lot of time with my family more and more. Like, spending time with my niece. I take my little siblings out to grab food. You know what I mean? I try to do things like that where I'm just kind of taking time away from the game, just spending some time with my siblings because, like, I don't know. I value family a lot. And then, like, yeah, I don't know. Girlfriend, I'm working on that, but it's yeah, it's tough. It's tough with coronavirus.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's just that's it. I mean, on the fundamental level, it's literally just having person-to-person contact and going outside and having a bit of that mixed into your days and just spending some time around people, because it's just there's a sense of community there, which is hard to replace. And I think we're realizing, and a lot of people who weren't realizing before are realizing you can still get that through Discord and playing games online with friends. It's one of the best ways to form a community, especially with people who are like-minded. It's hard to find people who are exactly interested in the same things as you, but like when I get to hang out with Maynard or Zombie Grub or someone and talk to them, and they're so interested with so many things that I also connect with, and I go, oh, this is kind of different to talking to my real life friends. Like, there's so many more things that we share in common, and it's actually a really deep connection that you can still have in these gaming communities. And I wish more StarCraft players in the fan base would get more involved in clans and hang out in these social groups.
Yeah, like, I think specifically the NA StarCraft scene is just so awesome. Like, we're all really, really close. There's so many different personalities. Like a ton of us played CS:GO for a while. We'll play League of Legends together. A lot of us, we've recently been watching movies together. You know what I mean? Like, we just hang out a lot. And obviously everyone has their life, and you kind of do your own thing for a while, but you always come back around and you hang out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I definitely enjoy the NA StarCraft scene a lot.
There's a lot of sweethearts out there. We have a lot of good times at events. I love. Did Fear Dragon ever release the final cut of his documentary? Do you know? I know he put out a trailer or a part of it, but I don't think he's done the final release. If he hasn't, I've missed it. I'll be really upset.
Yeah, someone in chat. Robbie's also one of those people, though, who's just he's such a vital part of the NA StarCraft scene. I think he's just, first of all, a fantastic friend. He's really committed. He genuinely loves the StarCraft scene. And the memories that come to mind that like really stick out to me is whenever I was in Kiev. Like, I was in this foreign country. I was in Europe for the first time. He was just an awesome friend. He was awesome to hang out with. It definitely brought me a lot of comfort.
It's
I like Robbie a lot. He's cool.
Yeah, it's actually, dude, it's so big. And there is such a great sense of community. I love it. I mean, I just
Yeah,
think it's
Estrella as well. Estrella was at Kiev as well. I was hanging out a lot with Estrella and Fear Dragon. They're
Australia's
both
a sweetheart.
fantastic.
You'd think you'd be a bully or something with such a cool name, you know, but I don't know. It's
Yeah.
like Max, or he's gonna, or really lame, or he's gonna start doing magic, and you're like, oh god, he's pulling cards out of his sleeve again. But all right, so let's move on. I think that was really interesting, and I think it's a cool thing that I'm always trying to find that balance. I used to be terrible as a pro player. Just to give context on that whole thing, just I play all day, play all day. I was very stupid with how I applied myself. I had very little concept of balance, and it's something
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
still
the
working
opposite.
on.
Like I literally just play when I want to. Like as I said, like after Montreal, I like actually stopped playing StarCraft for like 6 months. Like I just did not touch the game for a very long time. Well, okay, maybe not 6 months. Maybe for like 3 or 4 months, more accurately, because I know there was a month where, yeah, that was probably more accurate. Because I know I wasn't playing very much StarCraft before OSCraft. Like I played, I was
Yeah.
like I was in awful form before OSCraft, but it was just one of those tournaments where I think I was just better than the competition, generally speaking. And then Vindicta probably got a bit nervous in the finals, even though I think
Mm.
Vindicta was probably better than me at the time. But yeah, I've just always been one of those people. I just don't play if I don't want to. I only play if I want to, and if I'm really focused. You know what I mean?
Do you think you kind of burnt out maybe leading into Montreal? Was it just the disgust at a one-off bad performance? Is it
It's
just you
just the
needed a
stress.
break?
I think. I think it's just like the stress. Like after such an awful performance, I don't know. There's just it's hard to say because there's so much stress that comes with competing. Like even right now, I've been like really stressed out this entire like week and a half because of EPT, and
Mm.
I pick up on these little things because I have like certain things where I know that I'm like overly stressed. If I'm just
Yeah.
not like if I'm not conscious about it, I can pick up on like little things that are happening, and I'm like, okay, I'm stressed. Like even for example, just this morning, like I only slept for like 5 hours and woke up at 5 a.m. Like my sleep hasn't been too well because I'm stressed out. And there's just like I don't know, like competing is just really stressful. And like I talked about a little bit earlier, where I'm not sure if I have like a huge competitive drive to be the absolute best. Like I'm pretty content with just doing what I enjoy and then playing when I want to play and just
Mm.
doing what I like doing. So I don't know, like I think I'm improving a lot. I actually think I'm an all right player relative to the NA scene, but I'm just not sure how far that will go with the with my mindset because the way that I view it is that I want to be healthy and
Yeah.
I want to have a relatively good life with being healthy. And then if I do well in StarCraft as a symptom of that, that's fantastic. Um, but like if I don't, it doesn't bother me at all. Like I am perfectly fine with just moving on and going past
Mm.
StarCraft and doing whatever I want to do. Like I don't know. I'm not sure.
Was it always this attitude, or is this something that's more recent?
It's hard to say. I'm not sure. I'm not
Like,
sure.
what's the drive when you're competing, or maybe it was maybe it's changed over the course, but when you win or when you play really well, is there a rush while you're playing the games? Is it something when you don't play for a few days, you just miss the excitement of the play? Is it just
Yeah,
the satisfaction?
I think there's something really interesting here, and it's like I talk to a lot about my process with improving and like a lot of that. And I
Yeah.
always talk, I talk to you that like I'm always focused on how to improve and how to do this. But something that I've realized recently is I never considered, like, because you always focus on how to improve. Do you really enjoy the game? Because I think you need to genuinely enjoy the game that you're playing if you want to
Yeah.
reach an elite level. Like you need to like actually love it. And that's something I actually learned from my dad. My dad is a software developer and he genuinely loves what he does. You know what I mean? That's something that's like really cool to see someone. Um, but I realized very recently because like I've just been pretty stressed out with StarCraft competing, and it's like,
Yeah.
um, man, what am I trying to say here? There's something I want to say. It's like on the tip of my head. I'm talking
Yeah.
about StarCraft competing.
Yeah, and I
Oh
was
yeah,
just
so
asking about
it's
like
like
what.
loving the game,
Yeah.
but do I really love competing? You know what I mean? Like I don't know
Mm.
if I actually love competing because competing is really stressful. And I
Yeah,
think that's
that's
something that I realized recently because I was so focused on the goal of just improving and being a consistent NA player. And now that I feel like I'm actually consistent among the NA players, I don't know if I actually like really enjoy competing. Like it's something I do, and I
mm.
enjoy going to events and stuff. Like I'm not sure.
Well,
It's not
it
something I'm into.
naturally puts a crazy amount of tension and like there's inherent stress in competing at anything. And in StarCraft, I mean, I was a nervous wreck at a lot of tournaments I used to compete at, right? Man, dude, I like I'll never forget getting way ahead game 2 against Showtime at Poitiers, WCS 2015, season 2, season 1, whatever. I think it was season 1. And even he said, "Oh, you should have won that game. Like, yeah, you had me." And I remember just breaking down afterwards. I remember just like going and just sitting in the toilet stand and just I was just crying because I was just so upset and I was so stressed and wound up and I just could not perform in this high pressure moment. And it was one of this crazy emotional outburst. And I just sat there and cried for like 10 minutes. I remember it being so painful.
Yeah.
And that's because I would put so much pressure on myself. And I definitely think I am perfectionist and I have a lot of like, I just be like, there's a lot of very critical self-talk and I'm not very compassionate at myself. So this is something which when you're not competing, it's easier, but it's something I've worked on a lot in the last few years that's helped me try to balance my own expectations and lower the stress a little bit. Is just reminding myself that, it's like not everything has to be, negatively motivated. And the fact that I've been trying to become more to terms with the fact that it's like, I don't really control everything that goes on in the StarCraft match. Like there is a balancing act because I don't want to stop being competitive. I don't want to be like, oh, I don't care about the results. What will happen will happen. I want to have that killer edge,
Yeah.
But at the same time, my natural state is to be too critical and too like, if I do what I need to do, I will win. And then if I don't win, it's also incredibly harsh on myself. You fucked up. You fucked up. It's very hard for me to just objectively process the pain of losing in a tournament. I mean, do you think you're the same level of kind of very self-critical like wait, I think it's different for everyone.
It's really tough because I wouldn't view myself as a perfectionist, right?
Yeah.
But I also think that I'm very focused and I'm like, I get my builders like perfect. You know what I mean? Like the thing is I'm a perfectionist, but I don't actually care if I fail, which I feel like is probably the best way to go about it. I'm not sure if that makes sense.
So that's the funny thing though. It's like, where does the stress come from though? Is it just trying to perform at 100% and knowing you need to put every bit of effort in?
I'm not sure. I think it's just a lot of like subconscious stuff with like, your family and just life. I think just life stuff is really stressful, and then mixed in, you have like your own ego that you have to deal with within StarCraft, and like, I'm not sure. I think I've gotten a lot better about ego stuff, but your ego is always going to exist. And it's difficult and it's stressful and it's hard.
I think
I'm not sure. It's tough. I feel like a lot of it's subconscious, and it's hard for me to like tell you.
Yeah,
it's just like in there, but.
Well, it's like just the overwhelming intensity of competing in StarCraft 2 matches.
At the very least, I can tell you that I feel very stressed out. And I have symptoms of like being stressed. I can definitely at least point towards that.
I think a lot of people out there, I think we all wish we had this superpower. It's like anytime we feel any discomfort or stress or tension, if we could magically just like you press a button and you're like on your phone and it tells you like, you're too obsessed with winning, or like, you need to, like this is the reason why. It's like, you just are really stressed out because that last hard loss against the Zerg player. So whenever you see Zerg, but it's so much is the complicated going on in our head, right? So it's fascinating, and a lot of players have also tweeted in the last week about this, because you've had a competitive best of match like every night of the week in the most important tournament. Where you've kind of got to go through that whole tournament process and get in the mode and get focused. And then your match is over and you've got to repeat it again the next day and the next day and the next day. And it's been going for a few weeks now, kind of thing, where because everyone's playing basically a match every day. It's a lot of players have been talking about this on Twitter.
I thought it was just a me issue because the way that I go about tournaments, the day before and the day of, I play literally no StarCraft. Like I just literally do whatever I want. I played chess for 12 hours before my first match. This is what I wanted to do, so I did it. But then there comes a point where doing that, I get into this extremely focused mindset where I'm not sure. It's hard to say. Like, I think before tournaments, I become like really self-reflective. I really think about my life and I really think about StarCraft, what I want to do. And, I think about these habits, what I want to focus on. Um, but it's like doing that for 6 days in a row with the pressure of like needing to perform because my ego, I feel like I'm better than these players. I need to
Yeah.
win. Like I can tell myself that if I would have lost the NA and I would have finished third, like it really doesn't matter too much. But like finishing second means a lot subconsciously.
Mm.
There's just a lot, and it's like 6 days of just stress and like being in that tournament mindset. It's difficult, and I thought it was like a specifically me issue because it's just the way that I prepare for tournaments and think about it. But a lot of people are having the same thing, so I feel like I hope they change the format.
Yeah, it's nice for the viewers. It's nice and lots of content going out. And I do love that. I mean, I like the format that you have so many matches, but maybe not spread out so much, right?
Yeah.
Like you,
Well,
because
I think you just do a group. You focus on a group instead of doing 4 different groups. I feel like that's the solution.
so you just do like one group a night and kind of play through it.
Yeah, I feel like, well,
Yeah.
maybe like,
Or maybe over 2 nights or something.
yeah, maybe you could do like 2 groups. You know what I mean? You can do 2 groups over 3 nights or something. I'm not sure exactly because they did 6 days for 4 groups. So you
Yeah.
could just do 2 groups for 3 days and 2 groups for 3 days. I feel like that would be okay.
Yeah, it's a bit more compressed then.
Yeah, it's hard to say because you would still have the same amount of games. Maybe
Yeah.
it's hard to say.
What
You
about
could definitely do it in a way where it's not just spread across the way that it was, though.
is there any way you get in the zone before a match? Do you just kind of visualize your builds? Are you a guy who says, I'm going to do this on this map, this on this map, this on this map? How do you plan out a series and get in the
Yeah, I
tournament
do
mindset?
that, but then I also do whatever I want. So like I'll have my preparation, and if I just feel like doing something else, I'll do something else. So I actually had that in a lot of the matches. Like I think in almost all my games in this EPT so far, I played a different build every single game. And I was just like, well, I feel like this build's strong, so I'll do this here. Well, I noticed that he was maybe a little bit greedy this game, and I think he'll probably, so like versus Semper, I was like, okay, Semper thinks that I'm the better player. And I did a really aggressive build game 1. So game 2, even though I didn't prepare for this, I'm going to not SAD scout because there's a 0% chance that he'll proxy gate me.
Yeah.
And then I think that will prompt him to do like a 4-gate blink. And then I just blind countered 4-gate blink. He was like doing something of that nature. It's like, I feel like that's a lot of how my things go. I just think on the spot about how my opponent's playing. Like even versus Estrella, it's not like I plan to go Raven K3, but I was like, well, I think he's going to mix it up now, so I'm going to go Raven. So I was like, okay, let's do that. But I do have very focused preparation as well. Like my series for Scarlet, I have prepared builds for every map and everything. You know what I mean?
I really like that. It can help take out a bit of the stress, and it just gives you such good plans. And like you said, obviously you still adjust when needed, but it's always good to have those builds that you've kind of grinded out in prep games, right?
Yeah.
Do you what about like outside of build orders? Is there any process where, okay, I know the build, before I say ready in the lobby, do you like visualize the build, or do you just think about the habits of that player? Is there any weird habit? Do you have a rabbit's foot? Lucky rabbit's foot?
Maybe. I won't be able to tell you. Like maybe, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I will say it really depends. So like I think what's really useful is think about the things that make you really uncomfortable in a game. So let's use an example of Bly here, right?
Yeah.
Let's think that I'm playing against Bly. I'll just take a moment and think about the builds that he could do that would make me really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then I'll think going through those situations how I would react, and then I'll play those situations. So like for example, early pull, my Reaper's across the map, I need to scout, I can't lose my Reaper, and I have to micro at home against 6 lane. That's an uncomfortable situation, but once you have enough experience and you prepare for it, it's not that bad, right?
Yeah.
Or playing against 2 base Muta that looks like Nidus. It's uncomfortable, but you can deal with it if you scout well. So I think I don't do that. It's not like stuff that I do for every series, right? It's just specific players who are uncomfortable to play against.
Yeah. You kind of remind yourself of a few that, okay, that's an uncomfortable thing, but once I've prepared for it, it takes a little bit of the mystery out, right? You think as long as these are the details that are important, you're more aware of them.
Neeb has helped me a ton to understand. It's just being comfortable to play out every situation. It doesn't mean you have to play out every situation. It just means that you should be comfortable to be in all the situations. Otherwise, if you find yourself uncomfortable, you're gonna have a hard time thinking. You're gonna make worse decisions. You're not gonna be playing as well mechanically. There's just a lot that goes along with that, I think. So I focus a
That's a
lot
big
on staying
sign for your
comfortable.
improvement, I imagine. As soon as you play a ladder game and there's something that makes you really uncomfortable, I imagine you're immediately rewinding that replay and breaking it down and figuring out exactly what to do to address that so you're more comfortable next time. So you understand the situation better, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I do a lot of that, and then I don't know, just watch some K-pop videos before I play. Yeah, I do that a lot.
Cool. I think that's a good thing. You're kind of thinking about the pitfalls and stuff, and some people they build different habits, right? It's like I guess the most simple example is if like you watch a tennis player obsessively bounce the ball before they serve, or like like Nadal, he's always got to pick his undies out of his butt while he's getting ready to serve. He's like got to adjust his shorts, and he has his different sports people have their own odd little habits, and I think we all develop them subconsciously, but some people are very specific about it, where they're like, like I reckon Flash probably has an exact thing where he double checks or triple checks that his keyboard's in the exact right spot with his ruler, gets it on the correct slant, gets his mouse, positions things, probably does some weird little thing with his setup. And that's like part of his pregame ritual. So I actually really like rituals, and I kind of wish I had some more of them when I was playing. For me, it was like, just get the keyboard in the right spot. And I did used to measure it as well, inspired by Flash. But I didn't really have too much other than just trying to, visualize the things that could make me uncomfortable. Like you said, visualize the build a little bit. And one of the big things for me was I would get a bit too tense worrying about those scenarios, and they would be too much in the front of my brain. And I realized I needed to relax and let them kind of disappear so that I could react to things as I saw them, because I'm not going to predict everything that could happen in a game. I need to still be reactive and adapting to things as they flow. So it was like, okay, visualize it, review it in my brain, and then let it go. I mean, there was someone in chat saying, no battle plan survives contact with the enemy. And it's kind of that same thing where it's like, you've got to be ready to adapt. So you can't, when you plan out a series here, I think a lot of what you're saying, I guess for the people who aren't as experienced who are listening to this, it's kind of, you're not coming up with a set plan of an exact series of events you need to do A, B, C, D, E. It's more a series of frameworks that are going to give you structure in the natural chaos of a StarCraft game.
Yeah, and it's like I feel very strongly about having think through a lot and have a very focused plan, have an idea of what you want to do, but also just do literally whatever I want to do. Like I care a lot about it, but I also don't care at all about doing it. You know what I mean? It's just a mix of just, if I'm feeling different, then I'm just going to do something different. So that's something that I focus a lot on.
The dichotomy of StarCraft, extreme refinement, coming up with rules, builds, exact plays and reactions, and at the same time as wanting to have these set plans and builds and timings, being able to, at the drop of a hat, just chuck them out and do something else and adapt on the fly, right? It's extreme flexibility with planning.
Against NA, I had prepared builds to do every game, and then 5 minutes before the match, I was talking to Special, and Special's like, yeah, you should do this build. Like, all right, I'll do this build. So I just did a random build 5 minutes before my match.
I mean, okay, and
I lost that game.
You lost that game. Okay, I was going to say, if you lost this game, did you think, well, that was kind of dumb afterwards, or like?
I didn't think it was dumb, because I think it's not a bad build, but
had you practiced
it? Very good. He played very well. He played very well, in my opinion.
Had you practiced
it? And also,
it
I didn't lose because of the build. I lost because, first of all, the build didn't do as it should have, but I still got into a macro game where I could have won if I was better. So it was an aggressive build. I mixed it up. You know what I mean? I tried it, but it didn't quite go my way.
I actually had a long chat with Australia about this. We were talking about, he was saying he did a build and he'd only practiced it twice in the GSL qualifiers and he just got bopped. And he's like, yeah, it was a great build. That's why I picked it. But I probably needed more than 2 games, of practice with it before I did it. And he was saying, okay, that was, we were just kind of deconstructing that. I mean, did you already know this build? You'd done it a bunch in the past?
The thing is, I feel like I'm not sure if this is different from other Terran players. Yeah. I think the only example I would have is Uthermal. When I talk to Uthermal builders, he has all of them memorized, and he has very rigid plans about what to do. But for me, I don't have any builder. I literally do whatever I want. I know exactly how to get to where I want to get, just because I have a very strong game understanding on how to get to where I want to be. So I can just do anything if you just ask me to do it, and it's going to be pretty efficient. Obviously, it might take a game or two to get it really efficient, but generally speaking, I just know gas timings, extra production, like all those things off the top of my head, I can just do them. Just
think,
like because I just think about the game and how it would make sense.
Yeah, I also think Terran is the most plug and play. So Terrancraft Max always talks about, you just get like, you can take this opening and plug it into a 2-base all-in, or you can plug it into a 3cc double eBay transition, and the opening can be exactly the same a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So like once you have like your gas first opening down, you can plug that, your gas first expand into any other build from there. Like you're same with your barracks gas. And there's a lot of these pieces, once you get really expert at each of them, you can kind of like unplug this part of a build, plug it into another one.
Yeah. Exactly.
And you're such a mechanical player. So you're not going to miss depots just because
like
you're microing a Liberator rather than a Banshee or something.
Yeah, like I was playing a practice game where I was doing a 2-factory Blue Flame build. He scouted, and I just immediately went to 3cc bio, and it was just like, it was a pretty clean transition. It was like, felt perfectly fine, and then I played a macro game, and it was fine. And I just went to 2-factory tank. It was just really simple, easy. Like, I feel like
good.
that kind of thing, like, I'd much prefer that than having a really strict plan. So I also think it's just the objectively better way to view it.
You got to be fluid, man. You got to be fluid. And this is awesome. I'm really enjoying this chat, by the way. We've already gone for a long time. So I did want to ask you about those good habits that you're trying to aim for this year. Sleep schedule. So what's the ideal? Now this is hard because you are playing online cups, schedule changes. Let's imagine you've got no tournaments for a month straight. What's the sleep schedule look like?
I think the dream sleep schedule for me is go to bed at 12 and then just wake up whenever my body wakes up. That's kind of what I do.
Yeah.
And then usually it pretty naturally adjusts to a schedule. I'll usually sleep for like anywhere from 8 to 10 hours. I'm not sure. It's just kind of, my sleep is kind of inconsistent for how much I sleep. And then from there, I want to make sure I usually wake up. So let's just say 12 to 10. And then from there, I chill for like an hour. I just kind of do whatever I want to. Like I usually just watch some streams, maybe watch some VODs. And then I'll usually try to do practice for at least 2 hours. Whenever I practice, I usually play for at least 2 hours, upwards of 4 hours. And then I'll take like a 2-hour break, get lunch, maybe play CSGO, maybe play chess, you know what I mean? Take a break, chill. And then from there, I'm usually pretty happy with practicing for anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. So I'll either do another practice session if I feel it and there's appropriate practice partners, or I'll just do whatever I feel like that day.
And is it a max of 2, or do you sometimes do 3 practice sessions? Like if they're shorter sessions, do you sometimes come back for a third one?
Sometimes. It's usually 2 though.
Yeah.
Like if I know when I was preparing for TSL, I had like an insane amount of motivation. Like I think I was playing insanely well for TSL. Like even though I got popped by Rainer 3-0, I think my skill level was really high.
Yeah,
so like I think during those times when I was preparing for Showtime and Rainer, I was playing like an insane amount, like maybe 10 to 12 hours a day. But I think outside of like that extreme motivation, I play for like 2 to 8. How I'm feeling.
Yeah, which I think is a healthy amount. It's better to have focused practice. I think we're most of us agree these days. Rather than there are times where you're motivated and you're enjoying it, and you can effectively play 10 or 12 hours a day.
Yeah, but 100%. I have those times, right?
It's got to be self-motivated though. I think forcing that is the best way to reinforce bad habits, because if you're forcing your way through it, like it's hard to have your brain switched on through that. Like if you're just forcing yourself to play, you're going to get stiff. You're going to get rigid in your play, right? Like you're going to start doing dumb things and doing them again and again until the point where your brain is like, yeah, that's a thing we do. And it's going to repeat it in a tournament.
Yeah, like completely agreed. Like, yeah, I don't have too much to say that because that's just the way that I view it. I just think forcing yourself to play is a horrible idea. Like, I think everyone's different. That's a really important thing to remember. So that's not to say that you can't do that.
Yeah.
But specifically saying for myself, I can't do that, so I don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, no, there's no one size fits all. So I guess that is actually a good point to make. You know, sometimes people just want to copy whatever the other player does. And I think a lot of people did that to their detriment with copying the Brood War regimen of we're going to force these guys to practice really hard. And I think that comes from a very different cultural system and work ethic to Western society. So I think it was a real disaster, players trying to self-enforce that on themselves for some. For some, it helped them out a lot. So that's sleep schedule. So sleep at midnight, wake up at 10, or that's kind of like the boundaries of time you're giving. Obviously, sometimes you get up earlier, but it's like, hey, that's sleep time. And I actually think it's important. I've talked about this a bunch on the podcast, and I know there's people listening who are very busy, successful people who are like, you pussies, sleep less. I think sleep, honestly, maybe if I was more conditioned for it, it wouldn't be as bad. But I notice a very big difference in
Yeah,
performance
like
in
I noticed a huge
StarCraft.
difference, and I've read like a lot of studies about getting a proper amount of sleep. Like I value sleep like a ton. So
Yeah.
I mean, just because it works for someone else, I couldn't like it doesn't bother me one bit that someone says that.
I should research more about athletes because I think most athletes would sleep a lot. You know, it's so
Yeah,
important to give yourself that recovery time. And it's
and
just, it's so
even
clear. You just
even
play
with
like
that,
crap.
sleeping helps you so much to help you to understand the ideas and form better habits. Like what was really interesting to me, like the first 2 days I was playing chess, I literally couldn't stop thinking about chess. I was just thinking about chess like 24/7. I would sleep, I would wake up thinking about chess, I would dream about chess. I was just constantly just engaged thinking about chess. So like
Mm.
I don't know, like sleep is just something that helps you a ton with like focusing on that as well. So like if I don't get enough sleep and I can't think properly, I can't process the information as well. I'm not sure, but I just value sleep a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's been studies that show or at least indicate that your brain while you're asleep is rehearsing uh, certain habits and especially mechanical habits with like sports people. But what it's doing is it's like it's replaying it over and over. And that's like the phenomenon of you just can't quite get something and you're trying it over and over. And the next day you wake up and the first time you try it, it's just, wow, I can do this now.
Yeah.
And they say there's something where your brain is basically repeating it. And, you know, they argue or they propose that it's not, it can repeat it a lot faster because it's just running simulations. So similar to the way, you know, Alpha Star could play a billion games in a day, your brain can kind of repeat the same thing over and over. So if it's something that your brain is really stewing on and thinking about, yeah, I think it does help filter issues out so you can start to think through strategies better and understand them. But it's also even on a mechanical level, your execution can just get cleaned up with good sleep.
Yeah, and also another thing for me personally is dreaming. I haven't really looked into this at all. I just know for me personally, I mean, I haven't really talked to anyone about this, but I know for dreaming specifically for me, it helps me a lot with bringing to light things that are like subconscious for me. So like, especially helps me to deal with things that I know that I'm stressing about subconsciously. So like dreaming, I don't know if it's something, yeah, I don't know. I just know that dreaming, thinking about can help me a lot with dealing with certain things. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. It's just something I do.
No, I find when I'm sleeping good and I'm the most rested and I'm the best version of me, it is, I'm dreaming. I'm dreaming more. Basically, I know I'm sleeping enough if I'm actually dreaming and I'm like, well, that was a weird dream. Like, there's some crazy shit happening. I'm big on waking up naturally as well. Recently, after talking to TLO, I've been doing that more and more. Where when I'm at peak schedule with like sleep schedule and everything, I'm like I can have like a week straight where I wake up before my alarm every day, and I'm like, oh, this is the best thing ever. Like you know, just look at my phone, I'm like, oh, it's 10 minutes till my alarm, and I just turn it off, and I feel refreshed
Yeah, I
and
actually
all
have it a
this.
lot where I wake up like before an alarm.
It feels good, man. There's nothing worse than when you like the alarm's going off and you're kind of hearing it splitting through this thick fog, and you're like, you know, you need more sleep. Which we've all dealt with at events, sleeping in strange hotel beds, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
so that's sleep. What about diet and exercise? Is there any diet focus? Just eat more veggies, eat less junk food, or
Um,
anything like that?
for exercise, it was pretty simple. Like I just do chin ups, push ups. I was going on bike rides, but my bike broke, so I haven't been able to do that recently. I'm maybe
You
thinking about
said
doing running.
okay. Chin
But
ups?
just
Are they
really,
pull ups or chin ups?
um,
This grip or this grip?
not that the opposite grip. The second one.
You do this.
Yeah, that one. Whatever that
Okay,
is.
good. Pull ups, right?
Yeah, pull ups, whatever.
They're great. They're the best, man.
Yeah. It's nothing complicated. Like I'm just for me, doing something really easy and developing habits is
Yeah.
way more important for me because for me, I focus so much on how difficult everything is and how difficult it is to form habits. Just everything is so hard. So just make things really easy for yourself and just take it slowly. And I mean, I have an entire year to do just whatever I want to do. So I'm going to take it at my pace. I'm going to do what I want to do. Um, but yeah,
Hell's yeah.
that's really simple. My diet's not very good, but it's difficult, right? Because I had a better diet before Corona, but I really don't like going to the grocery store, and I just feel really uncomfortable just with a lot of situations. I understand it's just uncomfortable for me because it's just a weird time. It's just something I'm not comfortable with. What I am thinking about doing though is purchasing those. What are they? The meal kits where they deliver you the food, and
And you
they're
cook it
food that you can
yourself.
make yourself. Yeah, like so it's something I can learn how to cook with,
Okay.
and probably healthier than fast food or whatever. So that's something I've been considering doing because I do want to learn how to cook, and I have plenty of time. So
I think
that's
I'm not sure what delivery is like for groceries there. For here, it's pretty good, and it's restarted recently. But if you can get groceries delivered for like sometimes it's pretty cheap. It does depend. It can be pretty
Mhm.
good. Learning how to cook, that's a good life skill. I've never tried one of those like there's so many different ones of those businesses around the world now. The prepackaged or pre-planned meals, all the ingredients are there. I'm not sure. I think those would be interesting. Man,
Yeah,
I
like
would.
I think it's one of those things where it just makes it really simple for me,
Yeah.
and I can just do it, and I can feel okay about that. Even though I'm spending money, it's not like I mean money's an issue, right? But like I have an okay amount of money that I can kind of do on that kind of thing. So it's something I'm considering about doing.
Yeah, that's one of those things for me. I'm like one of my we all have our different values with that. For whatever reason, I'm always like I like saving money by just buying my food and cooking it, but other things I'll waste money on like no tomorrow. So I'm always it's like we all just have our own things we value and we don't value, right?
Yeah.
But I think cooking's cool, man. There's a lot of pro gamers out there who could use some advice. Check out Gemini's Twitter. Anyone who wants to see a terrible example, Parting was doing a cooking stream. And Gemini just tweeted this clip of it like 2 days ago. And it's like, he's like, man, watching Parting's cooking stream just confirmed literally everything I always thought about pro gamers. And it's like, he's like pouring this whole pack. He just chucks a packet of bacon in with his like noodles in this fry pan. And he's just poking it around with a metal spoon on one of those like Teflon non-stick pans. And he's like scratching up the pan while he's doing it. And Gemini's just like, ah. oh, it's good shit,
Yeah,
man.
it's one of those things where I don't spend money on anything except for food. Like I pay for just about like all my food for the most. I pay for the majority of my food, but it's like my only expense. So it's like I'm okay with doing that and developing cooking habits and
Yeah.
learning how to cook. So I mean, it's not. Yeah, it's something I'm considering. I think it's not the worst idea.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been getting into a lot more vegetables lately because for many years I've been just very vegetable light, and I generally just feel healthier when I have a lot more veggies in my diet and more variety. So that's been something I've been kind of like working in there myself, which has been pretty good.
Hmm.
Apparently I have almost high cholesterol, so I kind of have to. I was like, oh, the doctor's like everything's amazing except this, and I was like, oh. Um, I eat a lot of fat and stuff, but
Yeah.
so that's diet. Yeah, what about exercise? So you mentioned pull-ups. How many pull-ups can you do? Can you do more than like can you do unassisted pull-ups?
What's the difference between?
Like
I don't know. I just kind of do it. I'm not sure.
yeah.
I
Well,
don't put
you
too much
don't you
thought.
don't have like a resistance band or anything helping you.
No, I just do it.
How many pull-ups can you do?
I usually do like five.
That's
I'm okay.
awesome. Pull-ups are really
I'm
hard,
okay with that.
man. I can do like 10 on my best day in a set before I
Yeah.
die.
Oh, yeah. For me, it's been pretty slow, gradual improvement because I could barely do one, then I could do one. But I've gotten up to being able to do five, and I could probably push for more.
That's
But yeah,
awesome.
it's just I'm just like very focused on just slow and maintain habits and just do it at my pace. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I spent ages I had to just do the ones where you jump up and you just lower yourself down because I was a bit chunkier and I was very
yeah.
weak and I just couldn't do a single pull up for ages. So, like for me, it was very slow and gradual and just being very patient. Um, what's the trigger with the habits? Do you exercise at a certain time? Is it in the morning, in the evening, after a practice session?
Yeah, it's tough because there isn't like it's like my schedule isn't consistent enough for it to be like at this time do this.
Yeah.
As you've kind of noticed with the trend of everything, I just kind of do it whenever I feel like it. Um,
What about a trigger point?
yeah,
Have you ever thought of like doing it like, okay, I finished my first practice session, immediately exercise before lunch or something like that?
that's usually how it goes. Like usually, sometimes I'll do the bike rides in the morning, like as soon as I wake up. Sometimes I'll do it after a practice session. Sometimes I'll do it at like 7 p.m. Like all the things are in random orders, but I usually do all at some point. But
Yeah.
a lot of it's after practice session.
So are you not allowed to win the pizza pie weekly anymore with the new diet? Because you won 13 of those.
Yeah, I won 13 of those. I don't know what happened. Like I went from playing in literally everything to like playing in nothing. Just because I don't know. I just kind of focus on just chilling and doing what I want to do instead of just playing in a ton of things. So I'm not sure. I just spend a lot more time relaxing and thinking, I think.
Cool, man. Yeah, I've found it very easy to throw up mental resistance if I don't have a trigger for something with habits, and just like you said. So for me, I'm pretty bad with just like kind of self-sabotage and just making things harder than they need to be. So that's why I really like to have like a set trigger point.
Yeah.
Depending, and schedules change, so I've got a few different trigger points based on what type of day it is.
That's really good what you're talking about, because I think habits are one of those things. Like there's so many things that people just don't think about at all when it comes to habits, behaviors, like certain thought patterns. Like there's so many things that you just get in and you don't really notice it until you really take a moment to think about it.
Yeah.
And habits are one of those things that are just like, even you were asking about like, do I have a happy feet, right? Like that's something I couldn't tell you, but I probably do. You know what I mean? It's just there's a lot of things where you just do things. It's just unconscious, and it's really difficult to fix those. And for me, as I was talking about earlier, like my solution to those kind of things, I just spend a lot of time. Like for me, I've always dealt with my issues, my issues and problems thinking, and that seems like the only solution to a lot of things, because a lot of things don't have actual solutions. You just kind of have to cope with it.
Yeah. That's a lot of it, right? It's also, I think nothing is insurmountable once you accept it, but it's when you're in, for me anyway, it's more if I'm avoiding an issue, avoiding doing the hard, thinking about and realizing, okay, this is a problem. These are the implications of it. Let's accept it, think about it, deal with it. And then it's not as scary, but it's fear of the unknown. It's things that are being avoided. That's for me what always fucks with me on a personal level. It's same in StarCraft. If I refuse to spend the time breaking down the strategy, the sky toss that I keep dying to, or whatever silly strategy, because I'm too busy disrespecting it and not giving it the time of day, it becomes harder and harder until it turns into almost a mental block where I see a tell of that strategy and I'm nowhere near losing. I'm winning the game, but I'm already in the mind state of a loser where I'm blaming things and I'm angry and this guy's playing the game wrong. It's a really toxic mindset.
Really interesting about this is one thing I noticed is, okay, so I talked to you about how a lot of my StarCraft results, I peaked way above my skill level, and then I slowly, gradually came to that skill level over a few months. Like it's kind of like the opposite, right? But the only time where it wasn't like that was during Challenger. And every single Challenger, I would always, so I qualified for every single one, but I would always go out around a 16 every single time. And like I'd always choke, I'd have awful games. There's just something about it. I just had a horrible mental block, right? And then 2019, so I lost the first one. I was at a really high skill level for the first one, but like I would probably say I was like the 5th best player for the first Challenger 2019, but I got 4-0'd by Silky. Like Silky was just insanely good, and he was specifically really good against my style, and he's specifically good at ZBT. So it was a horrible matchup for me. And then the next season, I finally break through. I get top 4, and I take 2 maps off Neeb in the round of 4, choke, like throwing extremely hard in the last game. And I was the only player to take games off Neeb in that tournament. And then in the next tournament, I break through top 4 again, take a game off Neeb. Scarlet got 4 by Neeb in both of them. So like I was really happy with my skill level. I was playing well. And those were like my 2 breakout performances in Challenger, right? And then I took all the breaks. I had an awful Montreal. I took a break. I took some time off. And then I realized like early 2020, I only felt comfortable 2-base all-inning every single game because that's the builds I broke through with. Like that's how I reached the next level. So I realized I developed this, like I only felt comfortable all-inning every single game against Protoss.
Yeah.
And it was like this really weird thing where like it was just this weird mindset thing where it was really hard to get out of, and I'm still kind of in it. Like even versus Straya, like you saw glimpses of that, like with me choking. But
Yeah.
I'm thinking a lot about it. I talked to Neeb about it. It's something that I'm really working towards.
Yeah, because that first series against Neeb where you took the 2 maps, I remember
Yeah,
it distinctly. There was some great builds, great, very dirty proxies and all-ins and things, and you were very close to taking it. So that's so funny, isn't it? And then it's like you start to go, well, that's what gave me the
like
success.
that was where all my confidence was. Like
Yeah.
it was just it's just one of those weird issues that you don't see coming. You know what I mean?
Isn't that funny? Because it's such a subconscious thing as well. You know,
Yeah, 100%.
I've got to do this style. This is my good style or whatever. And it's like, and suddenly you become rigid in a game that demands flexibility and it demands you to reinvent yourself. And it's hard because, yeah, you don't, I know part of it is like, well, I don't think I can perform up here unless I do that one thing that got me here. Right. It's like,
you have the ego stuff. There's just so much there with the subconscious. And that's what I focus on a ton. Like I think psychology and all the different avenues with that is extremely interesting. I think there's a lot to consider there.
you do
I
any like CBT or like meditation or anything like that?
I mean, I'm not sure exactly how you define meditation, but I view the stuff about thinking through the situations as meditation.
Yeah.
Like I'm just clearing my mind and focusing on a certain situation. That's kind of something I view as meditation. But besides that, I don't know. I just mostly just think. I'm not sure.
I think just being introspective, I think that's like a form of meditation. You know, it's like if you're spending the time thinking through the things which are stewing in a way, you know, you're spending a lot of time trying to process it all.
And before like a lot of lands, I'm like very introspective about my life. Like I'm not sure. Like I kind of just come to like an understanding that like I'm not sure. I'm just introspective before events, and a lot of times I'm just like, well, if I lost here, like you know, where are things going? Where am I at? Like how much does this actually matter to me? And I'll just go through that thought process.
Cool. And it's just like a process of just kind of like getting centered and just kind of reminding yourself of where you're at. And it's kind of like
detach from like the win and loss, because that's really not what, like it has no meaning at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it obviously has a meaning, but it doesn't really have meaning in the grand scheme of things for me.
Well, that's the funny thing, because you hear so much of people being like, "Oh, it's just about you got to win, you got to win, yeah, you got to have that champion mentality." And I don't know, I'm very torn about this, because I think definitely, and especially in extremely physical sports, it is important, and it is important in StarCraft. But there is a degree of mental flexibility and also detachedness that you need to maintain as a player, where a lot of the players who perform the absolute best in the long term are the ones who are able to maintain a certain amount of control, and they have emotions, they have anger and passion and competitive drive, but I think they do also have a certain measure of control over it. And I think a lot of their efforts are not about trying to make themselves compete harder, but actually trying to control their natural competitive state and not let it get just turn into egomaniac, you know, control. It's like there is a balancing act in any competitive activity where you must be both incredibly motivated and competitive and wanting to win and wanting to harness that energy. At the same time, you can't let that shit run rampant. You gotta control it. If you're just feeding the ego all day, I want to fuck it, I'm the best. Yeah, it's very easy to feel like you're so devastated with every loss. And in StarCraft, there are many, many losses. There is no way around it.
It's just so easy to lose. Like there's no way to be consistent. Like it's actually incredible how consistent Cyril is. Like it's just so impressive. Like it's just incredible. Like that's not like a normal thing though. It's so easy to lose to anyone.
Yeah. Well, if you win a bracket, just think about how many people you take down. You know, this isn't a single match. It's you win your group stage, you win your next group stage, you win your round of 32, your round of 16, your round of 8, your semi-final, your final, and every single other guy on the other side of one of those matches is a pro gamer who wants to win as hard as you in a game where there's 3 different matchups, there's 3 different races, which makes it's not even the same matchup. So it's like you get a stronger matchup or a weaker matchup, and there's so much strategic diversity where, oh, he plays this totally different style. I'm good in this matchup, but I'm not good against this guy in this matchup. And it's a complex game, and so there's a balancing act, right? Keep the killer instincts if you can, but at the same time, you know, try to be cool. Try to harness it and control it, and really be focused on the moment and being adaptive and flexible. And it really is a truly incredible balancing act. And that is a big part of why, I'm enjoying doing this show so much, because there's so many valuable perspectives from every one of you guys who compete at the top that I get to listen to. And I feel like I learn so much every single time. And, I think it's really useful to kind of have these discussions where, I'm trying to just constantly probe and try to help you guys improve if possible, or at least just help you think about the structure with which you guys play, because I think it's so hard as a StarCraft player. I'm constantly in awe because I think you guys should have a psychological coach, a fitness coach, a dietitian working with you. I think every StarCraft pro gamer should have all this stuff. And instead it's such a testament to everyone's doggedness to just keep improving in the many facets that make you perform well as a StarCraft player. And it's no easy feat. So eternal respect, man.
Yeah. That's also something that I look a lot at with other games, and I try to take note of what they do. One example with Team Liquid and CSGO, like the whole team works out together. Like that's such a fantastic way for us just be healthy and exercise, and you have this group exercise where you're working out together, you build better relationships. Like I think those kind of things are fantastic. Obviously, I can't quite do the same thing in a single player game with myself, but I feel like there's so many things you can look at from other games. You can take these certain ideas and concepts, and even I feel like having a sports psychologist is so important. That's actually one of the major reasons why I joined Alpha X, because they have a sports psychologist. Like that was the defining reason for why I wanted to join, because I really want to I want to focus on that. And I want to work towards that and learn and better understand it. And I thank Alpha X a lot for giving me that opportunity.
Dude, they're so cool. I was so happy that you signed up. I think Alpha X is just great. I think there's a lot of passion in the StarCraft scene, and it's just great to see a team pick up a bunch of amazing players, a lot of up and coming players, and support the widest community scene as well as the top talents like yourselves who need these opportunities. Dude, this has been, I think, the longest Pig show we've ever done. So this has been awesome, but I think we should probably wrap up in the next few minutes. Was there any other topics you felt like kind of covering or that you'd wanted to talk about that we didn't get to?
Nothing that comes to mind. Besides that, I just want to say that Neeb is a legend. I love Neeb, man. He's so cool. He helps me a lot. But yeah, nothing besides that. I mean, obviously, just you can follow me on Twitter at Future of Terran. You can follow my team on Twitter. Besides that, nothing else.
Dude, this was awesome. The Thundershaft, big shout out to Neeb, big shout out to Alpha X, big shout out to everyone who supports Future, and everyone who's been watching the show and enjoying it. So I guess we can wrap up right there. It's awesome. We talked about so much. I didn't even get to the silly questions or anything, and I don't think we need them. I think it's a great place to wrap up. Thank you everybody for watching. Go follow Future's stream. Go watch him, of course, compete in the DreamHack StarCraft Masters. Semi-finals is going to be coming up in just a few days. I believe it's 2 days from now. Scarlet vs. Future is going to be there. So it's about, 15? Actually, only about 15 hours away. So that's exciting, man. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on. And much love, everybody, for hanging out. We love you guys. We'll see you in the next Pig Show. Goodbye and good night.
Thank you.
girls with their nails done now. Girls with their